Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Londonderry Town Council meeting. Today is November 20th, 2023. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing. Yesterday morning, I got a phone call from the police chief that the longtime Levins family here in town, that Bob Levins had passed away overnight, and Bob and his father Bill and the Levins are, well known from the Woodmont orchards and helped build Londonderry, literally. So, moment of silence for Bob and for his family. Thank you. Okay, you want to do this non-public now?
You're preferably
Preferable to do the non-public now. How long is it going to take?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Can we do it downstairs?
Certainly.
Okay. I'll ask for a motion to move into non-public session on a tax deed, tax interest abatement, RSA 91A:3, Section 2, subsection C.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye, Ted Combs.
I, Chad Franz.
Aye, John Farrell.
Hi, Ron Dunn.
Folks, we'll be back in 5 minutes. Come out of non-public.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
I, Ted Combs.
I, Chad Franz.
John Farrell.
Hi, Ron Dunn.
All right, we're back out. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to open with public comment tonight. First item on the agenda is Small Business Saturday Proclamation. Chad, could you please read that?
I can. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Town of Londonderry proclamation. For this recognition of Small Business Saturday is hereby proclaimed that by the Council of the Town of Londonderry, New Hampshire as follows. Whereas the government of Londonderry, New Hampshire celebrates our local small businesses and contributions they make to our local economy and community. And whereas according to the U.S. Small Business Administration, there are 33.2 million small businesses in the United States. Small businesses represent 99.7% of firms with paid employees. Small businesses are responsible for 62.7% of net new jobs created since 1995. And small businesses employ 46.4% of the employees in the private sector in the United States. And whereas 86 cents of every dollar spent at a small business in the United States stays in the local community, and every dollar spent at small businesses creates an additional 48 cents in local businesses' activity as a result of employees and local businesses purchasing local goods and services. And whereas 72% of consumers reported that Small Business Saturday 2022 made them want to shop and dine at small, independently owned retailers and restaurants all year long. And whereas Londonderry, New Hampshire supports our local businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our communities. And whereas advocacy groups, as well as public and private organizations across the country, have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. Therefore, the Londonderry Town Council hereby proclaims November 25th, 2023 as Small Business Saturday and urges the residents of our community and the communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year. Signed this 20th day of November 2013, the Town of Londonderry, New Hampshire, and the witnesses, therefore, the seal and signature of the Town of Londonderry and its Town Council.
Thank you, and good luck to all the small businesses here with this upcoming Black Friday and all the shopping this weekend. So shop local. Ladies and gentlemen, we are open for public comment. If anyone has a public comment, please approach the council. Hi, Dan.
It's been a while. Did you miss me?
Pardon me?
It's been a while. Did you miss me?
Always.
Okay. Daniel Bouchard, 8 O'Connell Drive, Londonderry. First of all, when I was watching the budget presentation on Saturday, when you were talking about adding firemen or personnel to the fire department, Mike, town manager, said that he didn't put it in the budget. And there was some discussion about whether putting it in the budget or going on a warrant article. I would hope that you would continue the practice that's been in place for a while and putting any new personnel positions on a warrant article.
I don't think there's any intention of doing it any other way, but
Well, there was some, I was
there was some
listening
back
to.
and forth, but
Right.
all right, let me put it this way. I personally would prefer that the council takes the same position that you're suggesting.
Okay. And I wanted to bring up one other thing. I know that, and I don't, I already talked to Chief Bernard on this, and I don't want to pick on him, but this is something that was done previously about the prosecutor position. I came in a while back and I asked about how did we end up with an extra captain? And I was told that captain position was put there to assist in prosecution. All right? Now, when I look at the union contracts in our, throughout the whole town, we pay for educational incentives for our personnel to go back to school. And when a person goes back to school, I would hope that that comes back to the taxpayers, and the taxpayers can benefit from that education. All right, and what I'm getting to is, we have a person that's recently got admitted to the Mass Bar, which is nice, okay? Which I don't know how that helps us here in New Hampshire, but if the person went and got educated and the taxpayers paid for some of that education, then that should come back to benefit us, the taxpayer. All right, and I don't care what it is, and some of this has been done previously under other department heads and all that. But I look at it and say, all right, so if somebody working in the assessor's office said, hey, I want to go and get my real estate license, and then I'm going to go practice real estate in Mass, we shouldn't be paying for that, okay? So I think it falls on you, Mike, so sorry, to look at that stuff and say, if we're going to pay for X to go and get educated and receive a degree, how are we going to benefit, and are we going to benefit from that? What's the long-term benefit for the town? Okay, now that they got their degree, they might leave in a year or two. What benefit was that for us? So that's what I just would like that the council, the town manager, budget committee, look at that, I mean, I know it's nice when and I have no problems adding personnel. I just think that we need to make sure that we utilize, maybe we have to restructure and say, all right, instead of doing this, you're going to do a little bit of this as well, and that's fine. But I'm all for making sure that we have adequate personnel. And I like the fact that our chiefs are filling these positions and making sure that we have a full complement of staff on board.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Oh, and the town treasurer, can we talk about that later?
Public hearing on that tonight. Anyone else for public comment?
Ray Breslin, 3 Gary Drive. I realize we're in budget season, a lot of things to look at, and a lot of things, even like warrant articles that I don't think have been even decided, or how much money potentially is going to be included. Pardon?
Nothing, for listening.
Oh, I thought somebody said something.
Someone's talking behind you, but I'm listening.
Yeah. So a lot of things have been discussed, like the Lions Hall perhaps might be put on a warrant article, or certainly something to consider. In addition to that, we have, not that we're talking about the school department here particularly, but we have a lot of issues coming up with the schools, kindergarten, and so forth. And then we have the other issues with potential water, municipal water coming to town, and where that money is coming from and when it's going to take place. So a lot of things to consider, as to the tax burden on the taxpayer. So you folks have a very important job. I appreciate that. And I hope all things will be considered and the folks be listened to. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
Yes, sir. Hi, Mr. Merrill, just need your address.
Yeah, Bob Merrill, 569 Mammoth Road, Londonderry. I missed the discussions on the November 6th meeting where we're going to close Mammoth Road at the intersection of Page and Drenia Field. First thing, there is no legal Old Mammoth Road in Londonderry. It's just Mammoth Road. And I think it's probably a bad idea to close the road. What I would recommend is making it a four-way stop sign there. If that does not work, then we'd have to go to a stoplight. It just, it definitely needs more work to be done, but I don't think that the solution is to just totally close off going southbound from that intersection. I think that's what I have to say tonight. Thank you
sir.
very much. I missed that part of the meeting. I saw it in the Londonderry Times the other on Friday. Thank you very much. Yeah, have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Merrill. Anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. Mr. Town Manager,
Yes.
there has been chatter with regards to illegal trucking on High Range Road. I know that we've been having a discussion about this for the last several months. With the understanding that we are a Dillon Rule state and everything, and that we follow what the state laws say, can you please give us a synopsis of where we are with this complaint that we received and what the conclusion was?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you point out, the town did receive a complaint or a number of complaints from one resident about certain activity that's taking place at Sunnycrest Farm that involves the trucking and shipment of produce. As with any complaint that seems to have a basis in fact, the code enforcement officer, in this case the department head, reached out to the complainant, reached out to the to Sunnycrest Farm and gathered the facts. In this case, anytime you talk about an agricultural use, there are additional state regulations and laws, as you alluded to. And there's been a determination at the state level that the activity that's taking place at Sunnycrest Farm is protected agricultural activity. There has been contact with the Department of Agriculture and the Agriculture Commissioner, Sean Jasper, and I have in front of me an email dated September 29th from Mr. Jasper that has been vetted by the town to the point that we're comfortable with the state's position on this matter. And I will quote from this letter, which is fairly extensive. Mr. Commissioner Jasper writes, "The words agriculture and farming mean all operations or activities of the farm. Perhaps we need to go further than that definition, as trucking products to and from the farm are part of those activities, even when the owner of the trucks may be part of another operation taking place on the farm." Commissioner Jasper goes further, stating, "I believe that when read as a whole, the legislation recognized that trucking is an important part of any large agricultural operation, and that the ownership of the operation or operations need not be common so long as those operations were part of agriculture and supported each other." He goes on to state that Sunnycrest certainly has the right to house their own trucks on the site. If that would not be seen as a zoning violation, then how is it a violation for another company engaging in an agricultural activity a violation? He cites RSA 672(1), Roman 3D, as saying, whenever agricultural operations or activities as defined in RSA 2134-A are not explicitly addressed with respect to any zoning district or location, such operations or activities shall be deemed to be permitted there as either a primary or an accessory use. And he closes by saying that agricultural trucking is included within the definition of agriculture that is protected at the state level. He closes by stating, "I believe that the complaint against Sunnycrest should be found to have no basis in law."
All right, thank you. Yeah, Sunnycrest has been there for 80 years and actually 30 years before we had zoning, so.
That's correct. And the last thing I would add, Mr. Chairman, is that anybody who has a grievance of their own is free to pursue that grievance by private right of action with respect to the use of real estate in any jurisdiction in the state.
Thank you. Okay, so next item is public hearing. We're going to have a public hearing on the town treasurer warrant article. Can I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The public hearing on the town treasurer warrant article is now open. Mr. Malaguti.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So this is a conversation that we've been having for a while now. It was placed on the ballot last year. It failed. And the consensus of the town council at the last meeting was, like the year before, that there's enough to talk about here that we ought to notice up a public hearing. We were up against the deadline to do so. And the purpose of tonight's public hearing is to hear from the public and to determine one thing, whether to move forward with the process, which if the consensus after tonight's hearing is, yes, we should move forward, requires notification to the Attorney General, to the Department of Revenue Administration, and to the Secretary of State to determine whether or not the proposed charter amendment complies with the law. It then comes back to us, where the town council would have the opportunity to say yes or no to move that to the ballot. So we could go through that process, as we did last year. We could get all the way to the end and decide, no, we're not going to move this to the ballot, even though we've gotten that advice back from the state that it would be legal to do so. And that's where we are tonight.
Okay, Mr. Finance Director. You've brought this forward last year, you're bringing it forward again this year. Is there anything you'd like to add here? I know some in the community have said that you were being told to do this. I would like to know who's telling you to do it.
So I understand the frustration that people have where this was a warrant article that failed last year. My concerns last year remain the same, that anybody can become elected the treasurer with zero experience. They can essentially shut out the finance department and do whatever they feel is necessary or potentially bad. Where the voters said no last year, I was under the impression we would leave it be. However, certain things happened in July that raised concerns from the public about budget committee members being able to control the finances. Where that is not the case, and the treasurer is the individual that could control the finances, I felt it was worth bringing up and talking about again, because there has been concerns from previous incidents for a position that actually does not have the authority to move money between bank accounts. Where the treasurer does have that authority, they do have the ability to lock the finance department out, remove our signature authority, limit our access to bank accounts, and do what they deem appropriate, whether that is in the best interest of the town or not. That is the reason why I'm bringing it forward. I felt it was necessary that we do our due diligence after the concerns that were raised back in July for a position that doesn't actually have the authority to move money, to make sure that everyone that was concerned has the opportunity to speak about it again on a position that actually can move money. It's $40 million is our operating budget. And right now, all you have to be is 18 years old and get one more vote. That's the only qualification.
But we are also the bank for the schools, so it's $126 million.
Correct.
Okay. Ladies and, is that it?
Nope. Yes, that is it for right now.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing, and for the public to express their desire for or against or anything else regarding the town treasurer. Public hearing is now open. Name and
You want
address,
my
please.
name again? Daniel
Yes, please.
Bouchard, 8 O'Connell Drive, Londonderry.
It's only because we have to keep our minutes. I appreciate it.
Okay. I guess I got mixed reactions on this, okay? And I understand where Justin's coming from, okay, to protect the town. However, the people voted last year, and they voted no. When I brought up the issue of Gilchrist Road, all right, I was told the voters passed it, even though it was slim margin, so it goes. So I think, if it's good for one article, it should be good for another article. But I understand what Justin is saying also. So I don't know how you fix this. Maybe give it a pause for a year,
So the only new information we now have is
Yep.
DRA has told us we can run a background check on somebody if they're appointed by the council.
Yep.
That's something new that we didn't know last year. So that's the only thing new the council knows, just so you're aware.
Is it possible to do that on somebody who's running?
No.
So you have no way of vetting these people? Well, it's the same thing. We have no way of vetting you guys up there either.
And again,
So, you know,
listen, you can run for any office you want to run for. But that's the only difference. We may or may not do this,
yeah.
but it's been brought forward again. There was a lot of discussion because there was a budget committee member that didn't resign. There was a lot of upheaval, and that brought this forward.
But the budget committee has no control over the finances,
We know that.
okay? They're advisory only,
We know.
and so,
So that's, if you don't mind, that's part of the reason why I thought that we should be doing due diligence, is the concern was there for somebody that doesn't have the authority to move the money. This person does have that authority. So I thought we should discuss it if that concern was present for somebody that doesn't have the authority, that to protect it, we should at least discuss it again.
now, have we ever had any issues whatsoever with anybody who's served in that position?
Well,
Does
we've had the
anybody-
same treasurer for the last 14 years.
Huh? Okay. All right. And you're doing a good job, so just stay where you are. Anyway, no, but you get paid a lot of money, all right? Yeah, that's my only, I don't know which way you go with it, John.
Neither do we. That's why we're doing
Okay,
this.
I mean, and I understand him wanting to protect the town from anything, because you hear sometimes, you know, a town up north or whatever where, you know, funds have been missing and stuff like that. So,
Weigh it this way, Dan. This is the way I looked at it. The guy who's in charge of $126 million brought this forward and said he thinks that we should be more careful. So we're not going to ignore him.
right,
So that's why we're doing this.
okay. So, my only thing is, the voters said no last year, so maybe give it a pause, look at it further, not during the budget season. The worst time to be doing something like this is during the budget season. You guys have enough on your plate as it is, all right? So,
you. Thank you.
Richard Belinsky, 89 Hall Road. I guess I only got two things to say. One is, I understand Justin's concerns. The fact that you found out from DRA that you can do a background check. I brought that up 20 years ago, that anybody that's in a department head that's in charge of money should have a background check, or at least a financial background, what their scores are. I volunteered to do it when I ran for treasurer, and they wouldn't do it. So that, if you can only do it after elected, work with the legislature to change that so that if they run for the position, you can do it ahead of time. If they know they don't have good credit, don't run. That's their choice. This is not new. Over 20 years ago, I brought this up. That's one thing. The other thing that I got concerns with is the fact that people did vote it down. You have the right to bring it back every year. If you decide to do that, I'll do another warrant article to offset that and put a 3-year moratorium on it and see if that passes. Because it's kind of like the people not being listened to. And the last thing, at the, I think it was the October 6th meeting, Peterborough was brought up. And while it wasn't directly said that Peterborough had a problem with their town treasurer, that's the impression that was left. Because the chair asked the finance director if they lost $1 million. I believe the number was more like $2.3 million. And the finance director tried to say, well, that didn't really have anything to do with what we're talking about, the treasurer position, because that was a foreign cyber attack. I got the articles in my pocket. what they ended up losing, because they didn't know if they could get it back from their insurance company. I don't know if they ever got any of it back or part of it back.
Minimal. Minimal back.
Minimal back, okay, I don't know what the final outcome of that was. My concern was, though, well, nobody said it was the treasurer over there, that was the impression that was left, because when Justin tried to correct that, and thank you, Justin, for doing that, the chair then said, well, did they lose $1 million? And he truthfully answered yes. So if we're gonna bring up examples of towns that have been through this, that's fine. Let's make sure that they're actually examples that have a bearing on this, and not something where if you kind of leave a little bit out, it sounds like, oh, see, they had a treasurer problem. That was wrong. And that's the misleading stuff that goes on in this town.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Christine Perez, 5 Wesley Drive. Perception is everything. My concern is if you bring this up again, it's going to be perceived or could be perceived by the public that you're not listening, that you didn't listen to the fact that the town said no, and you're just going to go ahead and do it until you get what you want. Perception's everything. If you put it off another year, it doesn't look quite so blatantly like you're not listening. But it's just the perception that people get. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jonathan Esposito, 5 Shelley Drive, Londonderry. Mr. Chairman, I do want to apologize in the past if my tone has exceeded myself when addressing the council. I thank you for the opportunity to address the public hearing tonight. I do wish to speak to the issue of the town treasurer becoming a potential warrant article again. I wish to raise several concerns that I raised during the public meeting last year in regards to the concerns that the finance director raised. I apologize. I don't know as much about municipal finance as Mr. Campo admittedly, but I am a finance professional myself, and there are some items of note that I wish to raise. The two concerns that were raised with the town treasurer being an elected rather than appointed position last year were the fact that a well-meaning, perhaps bumbling member of the public could get elected to this position and then engage in, some sort of transaction that would materially disrupt the financial operations of the town of Londonderry. However, as another citizen just raised, and I believe as you acknowledged, Mr. Chairman, as I believe the treasurer acknowledged as well, we have not seen an issue where a perfectly fine elected treasurer has engaged in some error or misdeed that has significantly, materially disrupted the financial operations of the town of Londonderry. So that is the first note that I wish to raise. The second is that I do believe Mr. Campo is speaking honestly, but I think he leaves out some points in regards to the checks and balances that do currently exist on the town treasurer position as an elected official. Mr. Campo was kind enough to illuminate for me last year when I asked if we had the private sector version of a rule of three where there were checks and balances to the financial transactions that are being made. So in the private sector, if you've got a staff accountant making entries in an accounting system, you've got a finance director, a comptroller, a senior accountant, usually multiple people reviewing that. In this particular instance, Mr. Campo did highlight last year during the public hearing that not only does he as the finance director serve as a check and balance against any transactions that the elected town treasurer may make, but the esteemed Mr. Malaguti as the town manager also functions as yet another check and balance against transactions that the town treasurer as an elected official may attempt to make. Not only that, but these folks are bound by the rules and policies and procedures that are set at the state revenue at the State Department of Revenue, so that actually functions as an additional check and balance, because if this person exceeds the scope of their role, they can not only face removal from public office, but they can be subject to criminal action. So there are already significant protections in place to ensure that the town treasurer, as an elected official, does not disrupt the financial operations of the town of Londonderry. I am to understand that there have been disruptions in other communities, as the chairman and as other individuals noted, but as the chairman is frequently fond of noting, we're Londonderry, we're just better than that. And speaking as somebody who works in an elected capacity with Mr. Campo, I know that he works very closely with elected officials, that he would do everything that he could to prevent something like that from happening. I'm not speaking as a trustee of the trust fund tonight, but technically myself and my 2 other trustees of trust funds, who do also manage a significant amount of money from the town, could vote at a public meeting in the future for Mr. Campo to no longer function as our bookkeeper, at which time he would no longer have the signature authority to submit forms on our behalf to the state, and he would also no longer have the authority to conduct banking transactions on our behalf. However, I can personally speak to the fact that Mr. Campo works far too closely with our public officials to allow something like that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Sure. Public hearing.
So is it, maybe there's a compromise, and I don't know if it's allowed under the charter or the law, but what if we, instead of having one town treasurer elected position, made it a treasury board where there were 2 or 3 elected positions, and then when money had to be moved or something like that, it would require 2 or 3 signatures rather than just one?
That would also require a charter amendment.
Fair enough, but that still is an option.
That's something that DRA would have to sign off on, and that's a larger charter amendment than what we're looking at. And just for clarifications, we can't do background checks on elected officials after they're elected. The legislative, what DRA said was the legislative body can do background checks on the applicants that the legislative body is the council, before they appoint.
Right, I understood that. So, but separate to that, even if it's a difficult path, instead of trying to put this warrant article forward again and seeing what the public has to say about it, is this a possible third option?
The amendment would probably require a commission.
So I think we can certainly get a legal opinion on that. I'm skeptical it's a creative idea, but I'm skeptical for this reason. I believe state statute requires there to be a treasurer. Our charter defines how we select the treasurer, but not only does state statute require that we have a treasurer, it sets forth the duties and the powers of the treasurer. And I think that where those statutes don't contemplate a board of treasurers, I'm skeptical that would be doable, but I'm certainly happy to look into it if that's the consensus.
Sure, take a look into it, we'll see what they say. Willing to look at anything. Anyone else, public comment for the public hearing on the town treasurer?
Glenn Douglas, 6 Overlook Ave. Kind of curious exactly what happened in July. I think I know what it is. But if you can do a background check for a treasurer, are we doing background checks for everyone else that's appointed? Because there's a lot of people in this town that are appointed. Are we only going to do a background check for finance? And the one thing I will mention is when this came up last time, the suggestion was to have a town employee serve in this position. But the former treasurer, who's been a treasurer for 14 years, said it should not be, should not be a town employee. I think she said a retired person who might be interested in doing this on the side. But if you're going to do background checks, I think you should do background checks for everything, especially if you have the right to do it. I mean, I don't see why we're singling it out for just the treasurer's position if it gets done. I'm also not for this. I mean, it was $800 to $999. It failed. Everyone that showed up on the public hearing that was held 366 days ago pretty much said they didn't want this, didn't want it to move forward, and here we are again, based on something which I don't see how it even correlates to the treasurer's position, but that's all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just to answer the question, well, why not for more appointed positions? The legal opinion we got was that you can do a background check if the position entails the handling of money. So I think it would be possible to expand who we do background checks on, but not vastly.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Good evening. Deb Paul here, 118 Hardy Road. I think it's kind of funny that 1 year and 1 day, I was sitting up there and this was brought forward, and we had a bunch of people here speaking on how they were against this. And I was, and I think Councilor Chad was also with me, who voted against it. And we put it onto the ballot and people voted against it. I really think that the scariest part of all of it is when someone is appointed, and I hear this all the time from people on different boards who are appointed to different boards, I will not stand up and question anything because I know I won't get appointed again. And I think that's a sad comment to make, and it hurts me deeply to have to make that comment. But that's a obvious thing. This way, an elected person is separate and doesn't have to worry about questioning anything that they see or not see or how things move. I thought one of Justin's biggest concerns was that he did not have enough help in his department, and I see us hiring for all these new departments, and one of the departments I felt that really is in need and does a huge amount of work here is the finance department. So in our reorganization that we have been going through in the last year, I would have thought that that would have been a priority, was to make sure that the finance department was healthy and had enough people to handle things so that Justin wasn't feeling overwhelmed and stressed. So I, for one, am against this. I think that leave well enough be, and I don't think, I tried finding something online where it was the treasurer that actually did something financially wrong, and I couldn't find anything. That doesn't mean it's not out there, I just couldn't find it. So if you do find something where it is the treasurer that actually does something, I would like to see that.
I believe back in 2008, yeah.
So sorry.
Give me 1 second, I have it somewhere.
I'm sorry, what is the question?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, in the meantime, just to address two of those things, because I just think they're factually not correct. One is, I've never heard the finance director, and I've certainly never asserted that the reason we were suggesting looking at a change to the town charter in terms of how the treasurer is installed had anything to do with Justin needing more help. I've never heard that before.
I'm not gonna have a back and forth.
And,
okay.
Mr. Chairman, I can assure you that staffing in the finance department is as much a priority as it is in every other department. So I would just like to make sure those two things are known.
There was a question, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. There was a question she asked him that I didn't hear, so I'm trying to find out what the question
Yeah,
was.
she was just looking for examples.
And
Sorry,
he had,
thank you.
he said he had one, and he was getting it.
Thank you.
Horace Seymour versus, it looks like the state of New Hampshire, but it was Litchfield's treasurer.
Say that one more time.
Horace Seymour, and
Yeah.
it was the town of Litchfield's treasurer.
Okay, and what did they do?
They stole money.
Okay, how? I'm just curious.
So
So let's not,
embezzling at least $135,000 from the town of Litchfield.
Okay. Okay. And I apologize if I misspoke, but I could have swore that last year, and I'll have to go back and look at the tapes, that one of the reasons you were looking for somebody was to work closer with you and help you with it because you were doing it all yourself. And I could be wrong, but I'll check.
thank you. Anyone else? So we're going to hear from the town treasurer, and then I'm going to close the public hearing.
Kathy Wagner. I heard a lot of the town rejected the Warren article. That was my fault. And I'd just like to make the record clear to all of you that I'm the one who asked for this to be looked at because of the 14 years I've served on the treasurer's position, my skills in business, my skills with my husband and the public, serving this public entity of the town of Londonderry for over probably 30 years. I mean, and seeing what my family was put through, doesn't bode well because it's even worse now. I used to go home with a lot of my opponents, and we'd have a drink and we'd talk and shake hands. That doesn't happen anymore. So you're putting yourselves at risk of getting an agenda-driven treasurer, and that's what I'm worried about. Do I want to go out next year? Oh, I'm sorry. Kathy Wagner, 12 McGregor Court, Unit 302, 15 Perimeter Road, and 4 lots at Pillsbury Lane. So I'm on Hovey. So I got some property in town. So I can speak to this as a citizen. But the atmosphere of even what I see here tonight, the atmosphere has gone so far down and so deteriorated. It's kind of tough on anybody who wants to throw their hat in the ring because of what can be done to you. And trust me, everything's been done to me, to the point where someone has even called my employer and said that I was doing illegal things with their product, and and they can get away with that kind of stuff. So trust me, there are people with an agenda in this community to destroy anybody they don't like. And that was probably part of the reason why I asked 2 years ago that we reconsider this position, because what the position is doesn't deserve the ridicule it gets because of becoming an elected official. And that was the major reason behind this. Now, to say that we should wait a year and do all of that other stuff, we've done a lot of revotes. So I don't see that as an issue at all. I think it was my bad, and I take all the responsibility for that failure last year, because I didn't get out and educate everybody on this position. So that's why I think 199 votes, is that what we're saying it lost by?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if I had shown up and said why I was for this, people might have been able to come up with a better understanding of why we were going this way. In some of the statements that were said, the town treasurer statute was revised in 2016, I believe. So all of the same regulations and responsibilities and all that are placed on either they're elected or appointed. So there's no issue there. An appointed person is going to be just as responsible as an elected official. So I want to get that straightened out. Second, Patrick, I'm sorry, to your committee suggestion. In the banking world, it's going to be very difficult for that to happen because you have to have one signer on the account and one signer only who is the true responsible signer in the sense of a business and a municipality. There is the corporate ladder and you have your, so it's banks are pretty strict about that now because of all the fraud that's going on. So banks have really started to reevaluate that.
Excuse me. If we can't keep the conversation down, because I can hear you up here and you're interrupting her, I'm asking you to show the courtesy to the speaker and stop talking in the back. Or take it outside.
That's exactly why.
Or take it outside.
Exactly why it should be appointed and not elected anymore, because that's a member of the press. Think about that. Who has a personal grudge against me and has used that paper her whole life to try to destroy me.
Let's stay on the treasurer thing, please.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm sick of this stuff. I don't have to put up with it anymore.
What is your point of order? What is the rules? What is the rule? What is the rules violation? What is the rules violation?
Not remaining on the topic, Mr. Chairman.
That's not a rule. Point of order overruled. Please
Exactly, another reason exactly why it should be appointed. because people volunteer because they want to serve and do the right thing. And a treasurer should not have to be subject to this because they're volunteering. Now, in regards to Peterborough, it was fraud, and most of it was recovered. It had nothing to do with the treasurer, so that was definitely, I agree with that statement, that we shouldn't say the treasurer in Peterborough did anything. To Dan's point, why are we bringing this up now? We have to, because of the calendar. If we're going to put it on as a warrant article, we have to get it on the calendar. We have to discuss it now, whether it's budget season or not. Just like anybody, if Richard wants to bring his warrant article in, so be it. We're going to have to discuss that too. It's budget season, and that's how it works. I just really think that it has come to a point where it's very noble. It is the right thing, in my opinion, and Justin, I really appreciate everything, but I have to disagree with you respectfully in the sense that I believe if we're going to move forward with this, I want a citizen and not somebody already on the town. I want that transparency. I think everybody misunderstands that they are welcome to look at the books anytime they'd like. So there is transparency there. But I feel that it was established when we incorporated 300 years ago. We didn't think we were going to have cell phones that were more powerful than computers that put the man on the moon. And as we know, the state of New Hampshire moves slowly. They gave us this option for an appointment, and I feel that that is the appropriate method moving forward. For someone to have to go out and put up signs, campaign, I've done that a long time if you bring in my town council experience and everything else. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and I give every one of you credit for stepping up because I know where y'all are, where you're coming from. But if you've noticed, people aren't volunteering anymore. People aren't volunteering for this. We're begging people to step on boards, to volunteer for positions, and it's like everything's become an agenda rather than a service to the community. And that's why I have highly pushed to have this become an appointed position.
Thank you. I'll accept the motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anything further from the council on this subject before I move forward?
A couple things, Mr. Chair, if I may. To the resident that spoke earlier, who was previously on the council, just for a point of clarification, that was my first, let me start over. So the reason for my no vote was because I had a misunderstanding as if that vote was a no, in my opinion, not a no to put it on the ballot. So that vote that I voted no for was incorrect and should have been flip-flopped at the time. However, I have since then changed my personal opinion because of education, really, and a better understanding, and I will always be a person to allow the voters put forward to the voters for a vote. And can someone elucidate a little bit more about Peterborough? Because I recall that their town administrator said something along the lines of that, like, all small governments are, like Peterborough and other municipalities are not as well protected as big banks or cities and stuff like that. what was the results of that investigation?
From what I heard, the results of the investigation is that they did not blame the town treasurer. What they said is that by statute, the town treasurer is always responsible, regardless of what happens. At the end of the day, they have to provide the checks and balances for that community. They did not directly lay fault. I mean, what actually happened was they transferred, like we do, they transferred money to the school to make a payment, like we do. And they got tricked to sending it to the wrong place. What the investigation said is that there were not enough checks and balances in place. No one got legally held responsible, but what they're saying is that you should have had more rules, more everything. What I think Justin is suggesting is that if he had somebody who actually gave additional oversight and other ideas, and he would have not more help, but someone else to talk to. Not that the current town treasurer may resign tomorrow. And if she ran again, she'd probably be the town treasurer again. She's won 5 times in a row. So, but I think what you're trying to do is plan for the future.
I'm trying to protect the town in terms of this is a high-risk position. You're in control of $126 million throughout the year. That putting that in the hands of anybody is concerning. I wouldn't let my personal finances be put in the hands of anybody. And right now, we're allowing all the taxpayers' money to be put in the hands of potentially anybody. And that's where my concern comes in.
Who does this locally?
What?
Who appoints a treasurer now? Hudson?
Oh. Barrington, Campton, Derry, Greenfield, Greenland, Hebron, Holderness, Hooksett, Hudson, Litchfield, Madison, Manchester, Merrimack Village District, Nashua, Pelham, Stratham, Swayze, and Wolfboro.
So this isn't something new. This is not unique.
Correct. We would not be the first ones to be doing this.
Okay. All right. So the question in front of the council is do you want to continue to investigate this and then hear it again in January and then make a final decision, or do you not? That's the question in front of the council. And you can go through the whole process with DRA and say no.
I think a wise person looks at all their options, and I think that, yes, I understand that it was voted no previously last year. However, there's been new information, additional education. And like you said, we can call an audible all the way up until the last minute. Why wouldn't we explore and look at all those options? That's my own opinion.
So I'm looking for a consensus of the council. Do you want to let DRA do the work or not let DRA do the work? That's really what it comes down to.
I'm in favor.
I'm fine with looking at it. I'm good with DRA looking into this further.
Okay. This does not mean we're going forward with it.
Of course.
It means we're going to do the investigation.
Did they not look into it last year?
They did, but you have to resubmit again this year.
Okay.
There's a process that you have to follow.
Great question.
No, but that is a good question. They did look into it last year. They did give us their advice, and we did move forward.
Thank you.
We may not move forward this year. Depends. Let's see what happens. That's good. Is that what you need?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So just to be clear, it's the language that was noticed up for today, and that's the language that we're going to be sending to DRA.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. New business, Resolution 2023-24, the readoption of...
Mr. Chair, we need to close the public hearing.
Didn't I just close the public hearing?
You did.
I thought we just voted.
Public comment.
We closed public comment, not the public hearing.
I'll take a motion to close the public hearing. My mistake. I thought I said hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Public hearing is now closed. Thank you. I thought I said hearing, but I said comment. My mistake. Resolution 2023, the readoption of all veterans tax credit. Mr. Hamilton.
Real quick, point of order, Mr. Chair. I'm going to recuse myself being a recipient of this credit.
All righty.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the council. So this is relatively brief, as we had previously readopted the veterans tax credit under RSA 28A. We've been notified by DRA that we need to readopt RSA 7228B, the all veterans tax credit, which is slightly different, but at the same amount of benefit. Currently, there are 169 residents that receive the all veterans tax credit. And the distinction between the two is when you served in the military. The all veterans captures some periods of service that were not determined to be a wartime service. And so those 169 recipients, if this readoption fails, their credit would go to $50 rather than the $750 that they currently receive.
Any questions?
I have no questions.
There's no questions. I'll accept the motion to approve Resolution 2023-24.
So moved. Second?
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, having resolved that matter, I think the time is now to determine whether the council will be using budgetary use of fund balance. This was kind of related to this question. And so we are, and I think Justin can add to this in terms of how this works. Under the Taxpayer Relief Act, $200,000 has been applied to lower the tax rate each year. This is the last year of the Taxpayer Relief Act. So we've included that in all of the numbers that we've presented. The question is there any appetite to do anything additional? And if so, then it will require another hearing after tonight.
What do we have in our fund right now?
There's currently $6,200,000.
We're about $3 million short of where we were 5 years ago, more or less.
I believe so. I'm not 100% sure on the numbers for that. Give me 1 second, I can tell you though.
I'll make it easier for you. What's your recommendation? Should we take any money out to give taxpayer relief, or should we leave it where it is and grow it further?
I believe at this point we should leave it where it is, and if you're going to decide to utilize it, it should be utilized to limit the tax impact for the other warrant articles, such as capital reserves, to allow the benefit for the taxpayers going forward. So instead of $100,000 being charged to the taxpayers for the fire department equipment, it should be $50,000, where $50,000 goes to that. So it decreases the expense on that aspect.
So you're suggesting let the voters decide if they want to use undesignated fund balance and for us to leave it alone?
Yes.
That makes more sense to me.
With the understanding, Justin, that the $200,000 under the Taxpayer Relief Act
$200,000
is already
remains, correct.
included in the projection. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it, as I mentioned in previous years with fund balance, it allows us, at this point where interest rates are 5 north, it allows us to grow the interest revenue, which also assists in lowering the tax rate. We set what I believe is a record high last year, and our fund balance is lower, as you mentioned, than it was several years ago, where we could potentially have had more, where that money remains for the taxpayers, but the interest earned on it lowers the tax rate for that year as well as potentially future years. Where the interest rates are so good right now, I recommend leaving it where it is and essentially utilizing it when interest rates drop below and we don't get that benefit of having better interest rates and lowering the tax rate through the interest revenue.
Yeah, and this also gives you a little leeway that the tax bills are going to be late now because DRA has not given us a tax rate.
Correct.
So when do we expect we're going to get a tax rate from DRA for the December bills?
We'll need to adopt this resolution, and then it'll go to DRA to finalize items.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
so we have a motion, I think we adopted this resolution, I believe.
Yes, we did.
Yes, right, it's in effect, it requires $200,000 a year, absent certain exceptions that I don't believe are,
The all veterans credit.
oh, the
is
all
what I
veterans was
talking about,
adopted,
yeah.
yes.
Gotcha. All right, so people will be seeing their tax bills before the end of the year? We hope?
We're hoping. I'm really hoping.
Okay. So people, if you understand what that means is that Justin still, regardless of whether we get the money from the taxpayers or not, Justin still has to send money to the schools. So that's.
In the county.
And the county. So that's why we need DRA to get things moving. I'm going to move on. Next item on new business, fire engine replacement proposal. You're a funny guy.
Good evening, leadership. Thank you for your time here tonight. Coming before you this evening, in an attempt to save roughly 100,000.
You are?
Bo Butler, Fire Chief, Londonderry, New Hampshire. In an attempt to save roughly $100,000 for our engine replacement, and we can do that through your council approval tonight to enter into our new engine build, and in doing so, fulfill a need. I want to be clear that this agenda item is separate and divorced from FY '25. These two things don't have anything to do with each other. This is just using already appropriated funds in a creative way to fulfill our need to replace our engines. The way it works at Londonderry Fire is the command staff will get together, come up with some creative ideas, and then we bring it forward to the finance director. If it makes sense to the finance director, he'll support it. If it doesn't make sense, or we fail to explain the why behind it, he'll say no. And Justin says no often, which is his job, and we appreciate him for that. In this case, we brought forward to Justin a creative solution to fulfill a need, and he supported it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy LeBlanc, who has a better understanding on how to explain this to you guys.
Philip LeBlanc, Deputy Fire Chief here in Londonderry. So our fleet of fire engines have about a 10-year lifespan on them, and the two engines we're looking to replace were built in 2013 and 2014, so we're coming up on that 10-year lifespan. The reason is after the 10 years, we start to incur a lot higher repair costs. For instance, just last week, we had to replace a turbo in engine 2 that cost us $7,400, and that truck is 10 years old. The other issue right now is in the fire truck manufacturing world. It takes 3 years to build a fire truck from the date we sign for a fire truck. So unfortunately, when it used to take 9, 10, 11, 12 months and we could sign for it at the 10-year mark, knowing we would get it in a year, we can't do that anymore. The other problem is the cost. So as it stands, the reason we're coming to you for this is because if we sign for 2 trucks now, we lock in a price. And with all fire truck manufacturers, every quarter there is a price increase. So with Pierce Manufacturing, who makes our fire trucks, there is a price increase of $20,000 this November 30th. There'll be a price increase in the first quarter of next year and the second quarter of next year. We're looking to sign for 2 trucks and lock the price in, sending one to build now and one to build in 6 months, thus setting the timeframes on the payments of these trucks upon delivery. By doing that, we also get a discount on the 2 trucks. It's minimal, it's $15,000 a truck. But altogether, between the 3 price increases and the $15,000 savings on each truck, we can save about $100,000 by signing for them now. And unfortunately, we're not going to see them for 3 years, so our trucks are going to be at like the 13 or 14-year mark by the time they come in. So we'll have to work with those pricey repairs, but we feel as though by signing for it now, we're at least saving some money on this front end to lessen it down the road.
Questions? Yes?
Do we know, at what point do we need to start making payments on these trucks? Justin may have that info better than you two may.
So going back to interest rates, this is the one where we could get potentially a prepaid discount, but the amount of that discount does not equate to what we'd be paying in interest during the time before we receive it. So when talking with Phil and Bo, what I recommended was we make the payments, we take out the lease and all that when we actually take delivery of the truck.
And is the vendor good with that scenario?
That's how it normally would work.
Yes.
Yep, you have the option for the prepaid discount or to pay when you receive the truck.
Okay, so even though we would be agreeing to go into a contract with them on these vehicles, we would not need to make any payments until we actually receive them.
No, all we're doing is locking a price in.
Wonderful.
And so we could lock in a price for one now and wait 6 months and incur $60,000 in increases, or lock in a price now on two, offset the build date on one until July 1st of 2024, thus separating them, but still maintain that price with which they're giving us right now.
I discussed with them, I'm good.
I do have a couple questions.
Please
Thank you.
proceed.
So, Justin, just a question. So, statement and a question. Picture buying a house, and then I've heard, like, with the interest rates being significantly high, if rates go down, having the option to renegotiate or refinance a home. Can we do that with a loan like this? Because if I may, sorry, I recall last year you had came before the council and said that you had renegotiated a rate. If I recall correctly, or it was a couple of years ago, you had renegotiated terms, and it said save the taxpayer in the town amount of money. Am I wrong on that? And you can say yes.
So I think you're confusing the initial master lease agreement that we
Okay.
entered into,
Okay.
where we negotiated a situation that saved the taxpayers money, because rather than paying an escrow company to hold the funds while we waited for vehicles to come in,
Yep.
our banking partner allowed us to be the ones to hold the funds.
Okay.
So that way we didn't have to pay them. And because we were able to group all the vehicles together, I believe we got about a 0.97 interest rate. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure it's around that. It was very, very good
What is
because
the-
we were able to group them all together and break it out in that aspect.
Okay, thank you. What is the term of these loans? Are they 5 years, 10 years, 15,
So for these, it would be 10 years, 10 to 12 years.
10 to 12 years?
Depending on how we want to separate them out to make sure that we don't run into the situation again of needing to buy 2 engines at once.
Okay, so just for clarification, you want to separate it out so we're not buying two at once?
Correct. I think that buying 2 at once is a
Bad
heavy
thing.
load for.
When there's, how many engines?
4 of them.
4? So 50% of the fleet is you want to offset that, so we're not replacing it every
And that's why
10
they're asking to enter into it now. What they'll do, what they've told me they'll do is push the build of the second one back 6 months, which pushes us into the next fiscal year.
Okay, so engine, I know you have engine 1 through 4, but play with me for a little bit. I'm sorry for not having your terminology. Engine 1, meaning first engine of replacement. Whether it's engine 2 or 3 or 4, whatever, but the first engine that we'll replace, would that purchase be in FY '24 or '25? Or
So-
25 and 26? Because you
You're
mentioned
talking about
offsetting.
The first one, we're going to be the one that's not pushed back. So it seems like, Bo, please correct me if I'm
Yes.
wrong, but I believe it would be fiscal year 26.
Okay, so
Yeah.
26 would
That's
be this
correct.
first engine, and then you're proposing fiscal year what for that other?
27 would be the first
27,
payment
so
on the second
offset.
engine.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Where do these funds come out of? And how do
So-
we traditionally handle it?
This is actually a 2-part item. If you look at page, page 73, and it is line item 4744, capital lease property. Part of the reason I'm recommending pushing it back like this is currently what we have allocated for their engines and other items, equipment such as that. Around fiscal year 26, 27, several of their larger leases fall off.
Right.
So we'd be able to utilize this for a minimal to, fingers crossed, hopefully no increase in the budget aspect, because we'll be using what's already budgeted for. And one of the other items we'll talk about later in the budget workshop is I've spoken with the fire department, Phil, Fred, and Bo, regarding their capital reserve fund for the fire department equipment, currently at 175. Actually breaking that out, putting 100,000 towards their capital reserve fire truck equipment, and allow that to serve as almost as a down payment to help lower the cost over the 10 years once we enter into that agreement.
So these are anticipated funds that are already budgeted.
They are budgeted for various
obviously we
other
have-
apparatuses
Right.
at this point, and their final payments will be around that time.
And then another clarification, I'm sorry for all the questions, I just want to have a better understanding. $100,000, about $100,000 discount?
So it's a $20,000, roughly it's a $21,000 increase every quarter. Now, their next increase is November 30th, so coming up here. So that's why we're looking to sign for one the next week to not incur that.
So you want to sign one for fiscal year 26?
So we would sign for both.
6 months, or,
So we would sign for both right now, but we have the second contract backdated for production till July 1st of '24.
for delivery, or,
For production, starting production, the 3-year start mark
okay.
of this. By signing for them right now, though, we lock that price in, so we avoid the price increase this 30th, and then we avoid the price increase the first quarter of '24 and the second quarter of '24 at $21,000 an increase, so $63,000. And then by signing for two, we're getting a $15,000 discount, if you will, on each truck, so another $30,000. So that's where the rough $100,000 comes from.
I'm good, thank you, yeah.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Are we required to do any down payments on these?
No.
Awesome.
I mean, we're looking at that 100,000 as, should it be approved, as a way to lower the annual cost.
Yes.
Wonderful.
And that's one, going back to my recommendation for fund balance, something of that nature where we'll put it in a capital reserve, it'll grow interest until we actually have to make the payment to
That's
help
great that
again
you're able
lower
to
the
actually
cost to.
use the funds in that kind of manner.
Yes.
Right.
What's the purchase price?
1.144964 per truck.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, what they're saying is the engines that you see on the road today are $1.14 million. Just so everyone's aware of that. That's what fire engines cost today.
And these are things that we need to work 100% of the time, every time.
That is correct. Anything else? What do you want to do?
I say we move forward.
I'm fine with it.
I agree.
Good.
Thank you, gentlemen.
That's cute.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if the budget committee doesn't mind, I'm going to jump over and do the voting machine so the moderator can get out of here. He's asking for us whether we'll move forward or not. Adoption of the new electronic ballot counting devices. So the moderator needs a decision from the council whether or not he has permission to move forward to make this purchase.
Can I speak to it real quick, John?
Of course.
Okay. So first off, I want to thank Sherry, our town clerk, and I want to thank Jonathan, our town moderator. They both met with me, and I appreciate your time. I had lots of questions for them. They answered all my questions, so I'm perfectly satisfied moving forward.
Anything further?
Good to move forward.
All he wants to know is if we can. Everybody's good with it?
I'm good with it.
Good.
Okay, Mr. Town Manager, please assist them in moving forward with the ballot devices.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry about that. See, I told you I'd be quick. All right, budget workshop. Now for the fun stuff. Justin.
All righty, so we have various items, quickly. I gave you all an updated tax rate calculation sheet. Those were available on the back for anyone in the audience as well. We have a couple changes that have occurred since the last budget meeting. One of the
Sorry,
big-
first question. Where did we get this tax rate from?
What do you mean?
This is not our current tax rate.
Are you looking at this page?
What's our current,
What's our, is,
So, okay, yep, nope, I understand your confusion.
I know our tax
The
rate isn't,
revaluation?
our current tax rate isn't $3.79.
That is correct. This accounts for the revaluation and the rough estimate I have on what the valuation would be.
So this is our best guess at what DRA is gonna tell us.
This is, so no, this is for next year's tax rate, not this current year. This is for fiscal year '25.
Okay.
So the reason why it's so much lower is if you look down at the bottom, you'll see that I have $6.2 billion as the town's estimated valuation.
Okay.
I believe it was around 5 point something last year. So the revaluation bumped it considerably.
Okay.
Which is why you see the lower dollar amount than normal.
Just making sure, thank you.
So one of the big changes is, as I mentioned at the budget kickoff, when doing the solid waste department, I had accidentally put in fiscal year '23's budget in the fiscal year '24 section. That doesn't actually impact any of the financial requests for '25. All it changes is essentially the increase from '24 to '25. It decreases it by about 100 or so thousand, because it goes from that contract being, give me 1 second. The increase on that goes from, I believe it was about 459 down to 160. So that was one of the bigger ones. Then there was a couple other changes in terms of the police department IT line. I had accidentally included the telephone budget in there when it's part of their management services total budget. So that was double counted, so that was removed from both default and operating. In total, compared to the last budget, it is a decrease of $87,120, with $20,900 coming from the police. We recently hired 3 new firefighters, so I was able to put in their salaries, which decreased by $51,000 approximately. DPW, I had the open position at a mechanic position when it was actually supposed to be a truck driver laborer. So that decreased it by about $16,000 with everything as well. The finance department recently hired a finance clerk. We extended the offer, and what we're bringing her in at is expected to be higher than what was initially budgeted, so that increased by about $9,800. Going back to the tax rate sheet, as I mentioned, with the fire trucks, one of the items that we discussed was they initially had requested $175,000 for their equipment capital reserve. We have split that out where $75,000 will go to the equipment and $100,000 will go to the fire department truck capital reserve account. Other than that, I believe everything has remained.
Questions?
Mind if I start?
Please proceed.
Okay, Justin, so you mentioned, some of the salary changes. So, a couple questions. I'll start with the finance one. So, I think you just said this, but there was, we saw a $54,000 increase from '24 to '25 in the finance department?
So that's twofold. One of the recent hires from last year, when we got that individual, they informed me that they would not be able to start full-time. They would need to start part-time. And because of the level of talent she is, I was willing to make that work until she was able to go full-time. So rather than budgeting last year, her for the full year at full-time, I budgeted appropriately to make sure that it accounted for that, which is why you're seeing an increase.
Okay.
Because several of those months are at part-time in '24, and the rest are at full. So now that she's a full year, you'll see that.
So this was an open position that you filled in part last year and in full this year?
So when we hired her, it was understood that she wouldn't be able to be full-time right away. So rather than budgeting full-time for that, I budgeted appropriately where I estimated when we'd be able to convince her to come and join me full-time.
Okay. All right, so in continuing the conversation about salaries, so there's a few lines that we saw some increases. Under the police budget, I was looking at the uniformed officers, and there was a salary increase of like $390,000. And we were wondering if that is the result of the new contract. I initially was wondering if the health insurance increases are part of that, but I've been told that they're not. I also wanted to know if any of the police positions, any of the 67 positions are still being funded at the lower rate that we did last year, since they're still vacant, or have we moved away from that practice?
So the reason for the increase for the police is it's twofold. One is the contract. The contract is in place and it has that increase. The other aspect is, as you mentioned, the way we budgeted for them last year. In addition to that, we also moved one of the 67 to the legal department in last year's budget. If you look at this year, that is no longer the case, and we moved that position back. So you're getting an increase of a full position being moved from the legal back to the police.
Okay, but that position was never filled either way, right? You moved that position to legal, it wasn't filled.
Correct.
You moved it back to police, it wasn't filled.
Correct.
Okay, that leads to later questions. So hold
Absolutely.
that thought. Okay, so you've moved away from the practice of funding those 4 positions at the lower rate.
We have spread out how we fund them depending on steps and looking at what we've kind of received for new hires.
Okay.
And where they've come in and funded it based on that aspect.
Okay, but we saved a bunch of money last year by funding those differently.
Yes.
We're not doing that now.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I have one more, I have 3 questions that are all tied to salary. So, in general, the regular salary lines, kind of across the board, seemed like they were going up quite a bit. I have 20% plus in some departments. Some are less than that, but those numbers always, in each case, seem to be a pretty significant increase. So and we're talking about town manager, finance department, we just spoke about, town clerk's office. I wanted to know what is this attributed to, and I wanted to make sure that we didn't add any positions.
So we have added positions in the town manager department.
By hiring vacant positions that were already there.
For some of them, yes.
Yeah, so, Mr. Chairman.
Actually, I think what you did was you recategorized positions that were vacant to new positions. Is that it?
I believe so. So
An administrative support position that remained vacant.
Correct, has been vacant for a number of years. And that position we hired back because, as the council knows, that position is spending somewhere around 60 to 70% of her time handling right-to-know responses as well as compliance. And that was something that the council felt I shouldn't be doing as the town manager, that we shouldn't necessarily be doing at the legal level, at a full, multi-$100 an hour cost. And so that was the decision that was made there.
That was a position that already existed.
The position has existed in the town's organizational, the position exists within a certain union, and it has for a long time, yes.
Okay, so
we're just
to
using that
answer his
position-
questions, I'm trying to make sure you get your questions answered.
Yeah, I'm just
So
clarifying.
do you have any new positions that were not there before?
In my department, no, we did not create any positions that haven't existed in the town before, correct?
Just trying to get you an answer.
Do you have any positions that do not exist in the 24 budget that do exist in the 25 budget?
Yes, the administrative support coordinator.
Okay,
And that serves as the right to know,
91As.
the 91As.
Correct.
and we don't need a warrant article
but-
to add that?
No.
You actually don't need a warrant article to ever add a position.
Okay.
We've chosen to do it as a practice because it's something that made sense. Hey, you guys want to take that outside, please?
The number of open positions floats around, as you know, Mr. Chairman, from time to time. And there's always a certain number of unfilled positions within the town. I can tell you that historically, as the town has grown increasingly complex, the burdens on the town manager department have only increased to the point where, as you know, Mr. Chairman, I was doing all of this, most of this work, and frankly, it wasn't a good use of the town manager's time. What has, during that time, as the demands on the town manager department have increased, Staffing in the town manager department has actually stayed level or perhaps decreased over time, because when Steve Cotton left, that administrative support coordinator position was left unfilled. And it's been unfilled until recently. And so that is something that I think directly affected the level of service that certainly my department was able to meet. And it's something that was of enough concern to the town council in the recent time that I took the decision to fill that position.
Okay, does that answer your question?
Not really.
So then let's keep going.
So that position's an $80,000 position. The line item's going up $125,000. First question. Second question, we've never run anywhere close to these numbers. The highest actuals were back in 2021, but just comparing back to 2023, we're talking about nearly a 50% increase in salaries.
So I can let Justin break down the 124 number, because I think that's what you're asking.
Is that a loaded labor number?
No, that's just salaries.
I'm just asking.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to find out.
What page are you on? Ryan?
It should also be noted that
Page 29.
the HR position is in my department. As the council knows, we recently promoted an HR manager to an HR director, and that resulted in an increase in that as well. And some of that is captured in that.
Former assistant town manager used to be the HR director, where our current assistant town manager is now in the planning department. So slight changes there.
Correct.
So, because is Kelly budgeted in the planning department?
In the planning department is my or in my department.
And split to the town manager's office?
Yep.
Yes or no?
She is budgeted in the town manager's department.
Fully?
Fully?
Fully.
Or she's fully budgeted in the town manager's department?
Correct.
Okay?
In the town manager's department is the HR director, administrative support coordinator, town manager, assistant town manager / economic development director, and the executive assistant.
Did the planning department number go down?
No. It went down 8,500. And that's one of our other questions.
So the planning department currently has the town planner, GIS manager, land use assistant, and recording secretary, which is a very part-time position.
But when we did that reorganization,
So that was one of the items you had mentioned to me, and you're looking at the actuals. In fiscal year '23, the town planner position was open for a period of time, which is why you're seeing a lower number there. The budget for that was,
These are all good questions. I want to make sure they get answered.
yeah, no, it's good. It's good. We're on 110 now. Thank you.
there we go. The budget in fiscal year '23 for the planning department was $275,860. The current budget for '24 is $192. And '25, I believe. well,
It's
you have that in front of you.
198.5.
So that's where you're seeing that drop for the position from the reorganization from last year.
Okay, but you're saying that 211 number, the 2023 actuals, was low because wasn't
The
all
previous
filled.
town planner had left throughout the year.
Okay, otherwise we would have seen a more significant drop.
Correct.
Okay.
If you look at the budget, that's where you'd actually see the drop, and that's, I'll be sure to include the budgets going forward for that. I thought the actuals would be more useful, but I think going forward, I learned I need to include both for you guys to be able to see the difference on that.
Okay, I appreciate that.
All right. Did you get your question answered yet?
I did,
Okay.
on the town manager side, yep.
Just want to make sure everybody gets their questions answered.
Thank you.
Yes, we're
Please proceed.
okay. So,
I don't know what they are, so I can't help you.
yeah, I'm just trying to kind of put them together, group them together. We're talking about salaries. I figure we just talk about salaries across the
I'm here
board.
to answer questions. I love it. Let's go. I work hard on this. I love when people actually ask it.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so we were discussing, when it came to the library salaries, we saw that there was a.
Joe, hold on. Library director?
Well, it's still a question for Justin.
No, wait, he's going to ask the library director, and it's her budget, we only fund it.
Perfect.
So so Erin's got to talk to her budget herself. Erin, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so we saw a significant increase in library salary budget. We were wondering did we add a half-time employee in for the 24 to 25
No, there was no additional staff added. I think,
right.
Justin, is this the email that you sent?
Um,
Didn't you send an email asking about library staff budget?
yes.
Okay.
I
think-
That's the one I believe I asked, Maureen, I believe you asked, asking about the,
23 was not fully staffed, but you said 24 was.
correct.
And in 24, there were 8 part-time employees, and for 25, there's 9. So it looks like one was added. Library technician was added, that wasn't in the budget last year.
There was no positions added for FY '25 at all.
There was a warrant article that failed.
Right, we did not fill a position because of that.
But there are now 9, and there were 8 last year.
Because, yeah, there shouldn't have been I don't think there should have been a position added, because we had someone leave last year and then it got filled, but that was not a new position, they just filled a position that someone had left. There shouldn't have been,
Okay, so Justin, if you look
so
at
we'll have
page,
to look into that.
if you look at 104, it's got the list of all the positions, right?
Correct.
If you have that page from the previous year, that would probably answer the question.
Is that in the budget book, Justin, that's online?
The one online is page 104 is where we are, Mr. Town Manager.
Is, from last year's budget book?
Oh, I don't know about that one. I'm looking at 104 in this year's,
And you want the same sheet from last year?
preferably.
Okay.
All right, well, while we're on that, do we have anything else that we can multitask on?
Sure. So, I guess since we're on salaries, we'll stick with
I just want to get everybody home at some point.
We're moving quick.
Yeah, so the salary budget, it increased by 10%, and there are some questions about the merit and the cost of living increases for library employees, that there was a 5% merit increase and the 3% cost of living. We were wondering if we could, did everyone, so for the merit, did everyone receive?
Not yet, because it goes over, some of them go over the between the 2 fiscal years. So at this time, not everyone's received that, no.
Okay, but it's budgeted in for everyone to receive the.
Yes.
And would, or I should ask, for fiscal year 23, did everyone receive
Not the full amount, no,
not the full amount?
no. I can't give you specifics, but
So in other words, you're budgeting for it, but no one's guaranteed is what you're saying.
exactly.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, sorry, can I jump
Now,
in?
that's because we don't have a collective bargaining group in the library, and we have no, so we don't have a union for
Yes, sir.
people who don't know what a collective bargaining group is.
Yes, sir.
So it's at your discretion?
This is a personnel policy that was adopted by the Board of Trustees, and it then is at my discretion to go forward with those increases if we feel necessary.
Okay. So we were just wondering if we could max the merit increase to 2.5%. The reason why was we want to bring the salary increases in line to the police and fire salaries. So going forward, and we'll be starting with.
So you want them to be at 2.5% and not at the 5%?
Correct. That was.
I have a question. What's our non-exempt policy?
It's more in line with what Mr. Cassidy just said. I'll get you the specifics in a
Okay,
moment.
I just wanted to know that because if Erin's gonna go back to the Board of Trustees
Yeah.
and the town already has a non-exempt policy, let's make sure that Erin has that policy. If she's gonna go back to the Board of Trustees and ask.
Yeah, I'll have to do that.
The for the town
We'll just make
is
sure Erin has it.
2.5 merit, and then a COLA tied to CPI up to 3%.
Okay, so let's just make sure Erin has the right information to take back to the library trustees.
That's great.
They have to decide, we don't get to
And
decide.
how does that work? If the town and the town manager and the budget committee want to propose that, lowering that max merit increase to 2.5, does that request come from us? Does it come from you? Does it come from the library director?
So, I mean, this is something that I don't think has been explored in a long time, is what is that dividing line between the library trustee statute and the town council statute? But as the chairman pointed out, the town council, it's the town council's budget, the town council funds the library, and with, obviously the participation of the budget committee, and the town council could, I think, decide to fund the library less, but I don't think, and I would want to get additional legal guidance on this. I don't think that we could tell the library trustees, you must have a personnel policy that says this.
We can not tell the library trustees anything. This came up about 10 or 12 years ago.
Correct.
And what happened is that the library trustees and the library director then decided that they were not going to take the advice of the budget committee and the council. So the council cut their budget and reduced funding. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not saying that's something the council would do. But I'm saying that's what happened then, because that is the only action we found after getting legal advice that the council was allowed to take.
So my concern is that our concern is that in the long run, if we are still going with 3% cost of living and a 5% merit, then library salaries are gonna outstrip the other roles in the town that are only receiving 3 potentially on cost of living and 2.5 on merit. So maybe we're talking about right-sizing lines last year and fixing lines and getting things kind of to better reflect what we're actually spending. But I think this also is an opportunity to perhaps right-size this and get it more even across the board in the town. And if that results in a question
I think it's
or a
a fair
request to the
question.
library trustees, that's fine. Rather than something like in the past where the town tried to force the library's hand, we can ask.
Right, there are no trustees here tonight.
I believe not, no, sir.
But that's certainly something, Mr. Chairman, I think that the trustees could speak to. It's a fair question.
It is, and let's just be clear, the town council isn't gonna force anybody's hand. Just so we
No, I was just
understand, we're not gonna,
referencing your
we're not gonna heavy hand anything. We'd rather work collaboratively.
Absolutely.
And certainly, we can suggest something, but we cannot tell them what to do.
So what the question is the budget committee is asking if you would please take that question back to the library trustees and return with an answer.
Sure.
I just have one more clarifying question on,
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that, and that is to request to bring it down to 2.5%,
Well, to bring it in line with the town policy.
into line with the,
Yeah,
okay.
which would
I
match
just
the
wanted to
other
clarify.
non-exempt employees in town, non-union employees in town.
Non-rep.
That's it, yep.
Okay.
You have it right.
so I
Thank
just have a question on how the budget numbers are derived. So it looks like we're assuming the full 8% increase in salaries. The 24 budget was created a year ago, in theory. Do we reset the starting point for that 8%? Meaning, you just said that not everyone got the full 5% merit.
Yes, sir.
We should reset the starting point on that 8% growth, not the 24 budget, in my opinion.
So what I do is I take, let's see, the budget presentation was on November 4th. I take the salary line for, I believe it was September 30th. I take what people are making at that point and base it on that. So
It just so happens that they're making exactly what's in the 24 budget?
that's not necessarily the case.
Well, so I'm just saying, it's exactly an 8% increase from the 24 budget to the 25 budget.
Are these merit
Assuming that
increases?
same methodology was used from 23 to 24.
Can I ask a clarifying question? When is the merit increases done? Are they done on anniversaries? Or are they
For the
done-
library, or are you talking for the
For
town?
the library.
They're done on their anniversary date, yes.
Right, so the number should stagger. if it's
Yeah,
done on their
yeah,
anniversary.
it's staggered throughout the year.
So my point, so if we budgeted 24 last year, things have changed. Merits have been implemented over the last 12 months. We shouldn't be basing our 8% off of the 24 budget. We should be basing it off of what the current
I understand what you're saying.
salaries.
Yeah, so let's take a look at that, okay? And, across the board. It's a very reasonable question.
You want time to dig into that and get back to us at the next
Yeah, he-
workshop?
Well, if he comes up with the answer right now, I'm gonna be pretty impressed.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. It shouldn't be exactly an 8%. Like I said, I grabbed the payroll for, I believe it was September 30th. And I
Everybody might have
based the
passed their anniversary
increase
date by
based
then,
on
but that's
that.
something to verify.
So, but if it is 8%, then that would imply that all of the employees got the 5% merit.
Correct.
No, what she said is that she's budgeting for it, they don't necessarily get it.
Exactly.
But maybe they did get it the year before.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're saying.
Yes, so the assumption is.
I'm trying to be the interpreter here.
Thank you, I appreciate that. The assumption is that we assume that everybody's going to do well and get their increase in order to budget for that. That's not always the case. We hope it is, but it's not always the case. And so we plan for the best possible outcome, if that makes sense.
Yep. And then
Okay.
if we move back a moment, it looks like Mr. Malaguti found the document. And just me glancing at that document, it looks like there's 8 part-time salaries and a vacation cash out for part-time. And on the 2025 document.
So do you mind if I interrupt?
Sure, go ahead.
If you look at the first library technician and go to number of units,
Oh, there's two.
Yep.
Okay.
I did it different this year where I listed everyone individually rather than putting
You
those
threw us a
figures.
curveball.
He tried to trick you.
That was a dirty trick, Mr. Kennedy.
Okay, so moving
I was
right
gonna
along.
say, I'm like, I definitely didn't put in another position.
So moving right along.
So since I've got you here,
Of course.
we had some concerns over G-Milks and the adoption. The cost, mainly it's going to be the cost. We understood from the budget workshop that you were estimating, what was $24,000 for the upcoming year, that one-time payment to enter into, right, the G-Milk services, that one-time payment.
That's the onboarding cost.
Onboarding.
Yep.
Thank you.
So
And
yeah, that's the one-time payment.
so the yearly cost after that,
Mhm.
what are we looking at? And what is it based off of? How do they come up with the cost?
So what we've been told, and so G-Milks uses a formula to come up with the costs. I don't have the formula. I don't think I have it with me right now, but it's based on how many. What part of the basis is how many libraries are in the consortium. So they factor in that. They factor in our number of patrons that have library cards, the size of our collection. There's a number of other things. I'm not off the top of my head. And then they use that in a formula that comes out to the amount of the annual cost. It's the same formula that every library in the consortium will use. And what we've gathered from them and that formula, that the annual cost going forward for a full year, normal full year, would be about $41,000.
Okay, all right. And something else that we're wondering, because library patrons can already get interlibrary loans. What are we gaining by entering G-Milks if individuals can already get interlibrary loans from other libraries, from other college libraries? And by paying, the $41K a year, how much more are we actually gaining by entering this service?
So we do get interlibrary loan through the state. So that van comes twice a week. This interlibrary loan would also be a different van that we would get from these other 13 libraries. So we would have access to their collections. Currently, right now, our patrons with a Leach Library card cannot go to the Derry Library and check out materials. They would have to pay a membership to their library in order to do that. So with this consortium, they will be able to go to all of those libraries, check out materials, have materials sent here from there. They can, let's say they go to Derry Library, pick out a book, check it out, come here. They can return it at our library. They would send it back through the van service. So that interlibrary loan grows from just access to the state. Not everything in the state is available. It's going to depend on, sometimes it depends on the library or where it's coming from. Sometimes they don't have the staff to send it. There's a number of factors that go into that. In addition to growing the collection 1.4 million more items, we would have access to a better library catalog. Currently, our library catalog is really built for the school system, the public school system. So it does not offer the type of services that we should be offering our patrons. So they can't get text alerts, email receipts, any overdues, things like that. There would be a better communication between the patron and the catalog and their account. So that's one of the services. G-Milks would also take over, I think we mentioned in our budget presentation, the IT piece. So it would save the town IT department essentially time that works on our catalog. There have been times where the catalog goes down, they have to look into it. That would all now be handled by the G-Milks consortium.
All right, and what other additional cost savings come, right, because this is an additional $41,000 a year, so where else can we see lines decrease in future years?
So yes, you should be able to see some of the materials cost decrease, so we won't have to buy every book that out there, because we would be able to get it more easily from another library, and our patrons would be able to go or get it, like I said, easily from another library. We would also save on the time it costs to catalog materials. So because a lot more libraries would be owning, right now we're on an island. We do all the cataloging and processing. that cataloging would come much easier because those records already exist. So we would just be attaching to records that already exist, saving time on our cataloger, which is only one part-time person, and my assistant director helps out. So we would save time there. But besides materials, there's other things that we would save. I'm kind of blanking right now, but I can certainly send them to you. In my presentation, which I can definitely send to you guys, I did mention some things. So we won't, you probably won't see, like, it's not gonna be an immediate scene, but like, as we go through the years, there will be a savings by joining the consortium. I come from a library that had a consortium. We were part of 36 other libraries in a consortium, and it was a great benefit to the community. There was much more access to materials and access to programs and other things in collaborations with other libraries.
Anything further on the library?
So you're of the opinion that spending this 41 on GMELCs year to year will be a savings in the long run?
Absolutely.
Will it tax our staff differently? Is it gonna be a cost associated with staff to provide for GMELCs, like technical services, technical liaison? Is it gonna pull staff from other duties? How does that work?
So we're already kind of, in a way, preparing our staff for the process so that they're aware of what to expect, because this will be new to them as well. The workload, we don't know exactly what the workload is. We know it's going to be more because we're going to be getting in more materials to hand out to our patrons. We're anticipating more patrons coming into the building, using our library, which they haven't been able to do before. So we anticipate it to be busier. I can't predict right now exactly what that looks like, but certainly we'll be keeping statistics going forward to show that difference. But we definitely anticipate it being busier. And we started, I guess you can say, planning the office spaces to accommodate for the different libraries that we'll be delivering to, or the van service will be delivering to. So we are definitely preparing for that change. And it will be an additional work for the staff, but I think no more than what it's not any additional work in a sense, it's just what they're doing now, but more. So, and we are, like I said, we are preparing and we will be training them to take it on.
So the taxpayers we have no voice in this decision at all?
Well, the trustees have approved to join the consortium and to
Right.
move forward
Okay.
at this time.
So the trustees are the legislative body for the library. They are a totally separate form of government, and they make the decisions, and they're the elected body.
Understood.
Just the way the law works here in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
But the only power really that the council has is we can cut their funding. If that was what the council decided to do and says, we don't want this, we're gonna cut it $41,000. If that's the only way they wouldn't be able to do it.
Okay. Are you in any sort of way kind of prepared for that? That might happen.
Cutting of the budget?
Yes.
I'm hoping it doesn't. I can't. I mean, of course I don't want it to. I understand the concern. I definitely understand the amount of money. That makes total sense to me. But we looked at this really carefully, my staff and I, and we did talk to the trustees about this. And I've talked to actually the other libraries in the consortium itself. This is a time where we felt it was a really good opportunity to move forward with this. If we don't, to my understanding that I got from GMELCs, if we don't do this now and move forward with this change, we will not have the opportunity in the future because they will eventually cap the amount of libraries they want in the consortium. So we should have done this, in my opinion, 10 years ago to give it to our patrons. But at this time, I was told by the consortium that there is a potential that they would cap the amount of libraries that they want in the consortium because of how much they can handle, of course. And so going forward, we may not have this opportunity again. That was my understanding.
Any other questions on the library?
I just have a couple follow-up and.
Please proceed.
So you've cut $10,000 in materials, but we're gonna be paying the 24,000 set up plus the 41,000 and then 41,000 every year. So I don't see how we'll catch up. It'll
So
be like,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
it'll be like just a compounding of more money for the consortium, then we're cutting in our own materials.
So the 24,000, nobody's paying that. We're actually raising funds for that, and the trustees are paying that. So the onboarding costs, the taxpayers are not
I'm
paying.
talking about the prorated costs that you're
Okay.
gonna start in '24, it's 20-some thousand dollars.
Yep, yes.
So, you're not really cutting in your materials enough to make up for the, additional expense of the consortium, which is like buying a new car every year. And the taxpayers right now are really strapped. And, inflation, can't pay for energy, can't heat their homes, can't buy food. And it just seems like, a want and not a need. And I just want to go on about the needs of the staff, because you could also come to us in a year or two and say you need more staff, because GMILKS requires a designation of a voting member.
That's
one per library, and an alternate for a mandatory meeting once a month. They require commitment of staff to key committees, like technical liaison to GMILKS, and technical services staff to the metadata integrity group. So that's actually more need for IT and not less.
No, because
And-
GMILKS would be taking care of that.
No, that's a commitment that you have to commit.
Yeah,
to
that would be
GMILKS.
me and my assistant director would be going to those meetings.
For all of those? And then that takes away from you helping the rest of the library staff, so then you're gonna probably need to ask for more staff in the future.
I can't say that we won't. I mean, as we continue to grow and serve the community, there's a possibility we would need more staff. I think that would be go for any department.
So there's a commitment of staff to participate in all other committees, and that you must demonstrate financial stability and commitment to the future support of GMILKS. So you're really putting the town over a barrel for a lot of money every year for the next how many years?
But we're giving them, in my opinion, we're giving them a service that I think is really important and that they need, and that they've, in our library surveys, that they've agreed to they want.
Do they need it as much as energy, heat their homes or buy food?
I don't think that's a fair comparison. We're providing people with materials and items that if they can't afford, like internet service and computers, and helping people apply for jobs and things of that nature. So we are providing a service to help with that. And we provide resources to help them find organizations that can help them heat their home. So we are there to help those people. We provide a space where they can use free Wi-Fi and free study rooms in order to do Zoom calls and work services.
Right, but we're talking about absolutely, but that's not GMILKS.
1% of time, please.
All the libraries in GMILKS are also in the interlibrary loan system that we're all paying state taxes for. There's hundreds of libraries in the interlibrary loan, and there's 8 colleges, including NEC. So I'm not really seeing an advantage to joining GMILKS in addition to the interlibrary loan provided by the state for that much money.
Well, I mean, you have access to, our patrons would be able to go to their libraries, which they can't do now. And that interlibrary loan is included in the cost.
But don't you want our patrons to come to our library where they can get the internet access and the help with the notary and?
Yeah, and they do. They come, but they also need materials that we don't have because we can't fit in the space or we don't have the budget for. And this would be allowing for that.
But are the libraries in GMILKS also in the interlibrary loan system?
To my knowledge, they are, but I believe they are. Every library is involved in the state one.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I want to have you on a few items. So she is also cutting another $5,800 from office supplies, and as well another $2,000 from the general expenses. So it's not just $10,000, it's $17,800 that they're cutting out of their budget to help put this forward. So it's not just 10.
Yeah, but it's not covering the full cost. And it's just gonna keep magnifying exponentially over the years, and then with the need of more staff. I'm just really concerned that this is more of a want and not a need.
It's a want for the community,
It's not like a fire
absolutely.
truck.
Sorry, I was going to say, Mr. Campo, can I ask a clarifying question? On the very first page that you have the tax rate calculations, it says that approximately $60,000 in appropriations is equal to 1 cent on the tax rate. So does this mean if we use that same type of mathematical calculation that the $41,000 for GMILKS is worth less than 1 cent per each taxpayer?
Point
Seven tenths.
7/10 of a cent.
Yep.
Yes.
For each each taxpayer for GMilks.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Times 1,000.
For like a
home value.
$600,000 home, it'd be $4.20.
Yep.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Aaron.
You're welcome.
Okay, please proceed. All right, I'll jump right to the Lions Hall.
You're gonna jump on the Lions Hall?
Jump right to the Lions Hall.
Okay.
Stop it.
I didn't know you were Superman.
So how much do you want to spend? $3.5 million? Because nobody up here does.
No, that seems to be a consensus. So, we'd like to propose, I apologize, we'd like to propose, Mr. Town Manager and Mr. Chair, that instead of putting a warrant article forward where we're gonna spend $500,000 on a Lions Hall, to make some progress there, we would rather see that become a question in the style of what we did with water last year, and solicit the voters' input on what they want to do with the Lions Hall, rather than attaching monetary value to it right now.
That's perfectly fine with me.
Well, no, I mean, here's the issue. What the issue is we don't know what the $500,000 is for.
Agreed.
That's what we've asked them to come back and tell us. So we don't know what the $500,000 is for. We don't know what they intend to do with it. We don't know what condition the hall will be in. But what they have told us is if we ignore it another year, we take a chance of it being in more disrepair. So what I'd like to find out is I'd like to get the question answered we asked the last time: what is the $500,000 for? I don't know the answer to that.
Yes. So, Mr. Chairman, you're exactly right. I mean, that is certainly an option, and it's something that we did with water, as Mr. Cassidy pointed out. But there are, detriments associated with that, which you outlined. Mr. Wally is actually out of state and unable to be here tonight on a pre-existing obligation, but I have spoken with Weston and Sampson. He did some work to answer that question in advance. And I can tell you that, so I had a conversation with Mr. Tenley, who's been before this council and the Budget Committee before. And, he provided some numbers to answer this question. But the problem is really this. So we as he explained it to me, we could segregate off the floor, for example, and fix the floor, and maybe that costs $50,000. But then we still have a building that is not ADA accessible. We still have a building that has a substandard electrical system. We still have a building that doesn't have fire protection, which isn't strictly required, but it probably would make sense for a building like this. And so the recommendation from Weston and Sampson and from Mr. Wally is that $500,000 could be used to update and finalize what was referred to as the basis of design. And that is a series of due diligence investigations, including a structural assessment, evaluation of the front crawl space, the main hall, the north wall has some structural problems. Obviously, the floor has some structural.
Stop. I don't want to hear what the engineers have to say anymore. They got us to $3.5 million. Okay? Here's the question. The question is very simple. What does it take to put I'll write these down and I'll give them to you. What does it take to put the electrical system up to code? Okay? What is the minimum we can do for fire without sprinkler for fire protection? What does it cost for the floor? No access to the second floor. And what is be able to do to keep the building in a condition in which we can be able to not have it fall down, right? I'm not an engineer. What I don't want to hear is we have to do more studies. No more studies. We have a building inspector. We have a town engineer. We have volunteers in this community. Can we please have someone go over there and tell us what they can do for $500,000? I mean, I'm sorry if I'm asking so bluntly and directly.
No, I'm a blunt and direct person, as you know, Mr. Chairman, so I'm perfectly happy to.
So please go over there and find
Yes.
out what is it. Take the fire chief, take Public Works, Mr. Trotter over there, he loves engineering, okay? Take the building inspector, who's like built half the stuff in town and half the houses, okay? Get an electrician who likes us and go over there and say, okay, what can we actually do so that we can make this building so it's functional? so that we can figure out whether or not we can or we can't do something for $500,000. If we can't do something, then let's go to the ballot and see if people want to pay $3 million. Okay? But let's go use the talent we have and go find out what we can and we can't do. No more Weston and Sampson. Okay? No more $3.5 million. That's what I'm asking for. You guys good with that?
Yeah, so,
Do the research, that's fine.
yeah, I want to know what our options are in general. If, should we sell
You
it?
wanna-
Should we?
No, we're not selling it. We don't sell our property.
Well,
I mean,
whatever. Should
but
we tear
not-
it down and put something else in its place? And
That's
I'm not
$3.5 million.
suggesting- I'm not suggesting anything. But then why are we gonna put money into rehabbing what's there if we're gonna tear it down and put something else in its place?
It's the original Morrison house. It's the history of the town. Okay? I'll buy the rail for the people who want to tear it down, who get run out of town.
I understand. And-
This is,
and
we're,
I've heard
we're a
that.
New England town. That's the original town hall, has the original town vault in it. All right? If you don't want to save it, don't save it. But there's a lot of people in this town that I think would tie themselves to the building if you try to tear it down.
Our treasurer said last meeting.
First of all, I'm not suggesting anything, any path. I'm suggesting that we let the voters decide what the path is. And that, and.
The voters elected the town council to decide. So what I want is information so the town council can make a good decision on whether or not we should save that building. And should I save the Lions Hall? Ann Champa, should we save the Lions Hall? No, no, no. But I'll let
It
you
is right
tell-
now.
You're the town historian. Should we save the Lions Hall or not, or should we tear it down?
Ian Champa, 28 Wedgewood Drive. Are you nuts?
Oh, whoa.
Thank you, Ann.
know the
Thank you,
history
Ann.
of this town?
Andy,
We just celebrated the 300th anniversary of Londonderry recently. Do you know the history of this town and the history of this building? It was
Kathy's gonna come
Reverend
back down
William
if we keep
Morrison's
going.
meeting house.
let me
That
respond.
means
No responding. We're done. No,
Let me
that's it.
respond, please, because you're
Let-
painting
let-
this.
let Ann
You're
finish.
painting this that I want to destroy the Lions Hall. And that is not the case.
You said, should we
That is
tear
not
it
the
down?
case. I said.
you want to know why? Because of the history of this town and the importance of that building.
Okay,
It
and
stood-
you made your point.
Excuse me.
Good job.
Wait a second, I want to say something. It stood on the hill on Max Farm, on the corner of Hardy and Pillsbury Road. Imagine that hill where that lookout is presently, which is part of Woodmont. That's where that building stood before.
And we moved it.
And it was the Presbyterian meeting house for Reverend William Morrison, who died in 1818, by the way. And it was moved to the center of town. And that addition was added on in the front of it later on. And so we've got a very long history with that building. And if anybody tells me that you want to tear it down or sell it, I'll be there with John, chained to it.
Okay.
And you'll have to pry us away from there.
I understand, and I'm not suggesting
And-
those things. I'm suggesting that we have a clear path forward, and I feel like we don't have a clear path forward right now.
And I'm
Meaning that we have this, we're talking about spending $500,000. We don't know what that does. I also think that if we spend $500,000, that's committing us for more than $500,000 in the long run.
It's
the first-
stabilizing the building.
I understand,
And
but
that's
it's,
why we're going to ask the questions and find out what's required from the talent we have in-house. No more engineers. Let's find out what it is we can and we can't do from the people we work with every day and we trust.
okay, let me reiterate that I am not saying what we should do with that building. I'm saying we should have clear what our paths and options are. Are we on the same page?
Yeah, but I think we ought to talk to Preservation, I should say, New Hampshire Preservation Alliance. They're the experts on this. They already agreed to come down to town to take a look at the building. I talked to them.
Good, have them call me.
Oh, no problem.
Do they have funds to help with historic preservation?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ann.
Does this alliance have funds to help with historic preservation?
It's not the Lions Hall. It's owned by the
No,
town.
the Historic Alliance she was just talking about. I understand, you just mentioned the Historic Preservation Alliance.
And
Is
you
that a
know what?
group that could
They're
possibly
gonna
help?
call me and I'm gonna ask them.
She's
And they're gonna call me and I'm gonna ask them.
Thanks for painting me as the bad guy here, John.
She's gonna have to walk
Hey,
you out
listen,
now.
I didn't tell you to say all those things. Let's get some answers from the people we trust and find out whether or not, no more Weston and Sampson. I'm tired of listening to people who want to spend our money. Okay, let's find out from the people we trust. And if they come forward and they say, you know what? This is something we just can't do. Let's get to the bottom of this thing once and for all. We fixed the floor once 10 years ago. I'm not advocating for doing it again, but let's get some people we trust and figure out the right thing to do. That's what I'm advocating for.
Well, and I think also the good end of that is having, in a way, a third-party review against Weston Sampson's numbers and having our local people actually put forth, does this actually make sense with what Weston Sampson's saying or not? And so we actually have them go out there. It'll actually, are their numbers, out of whack, or can we get it done for way cheaper?
I've known our town engineer for 20 years. Yeah. There's nobody more black and white than him.
Agree. I completely agree.
Since the Budcoms and the crosshairs, why are we increasing? Why are we increasing their budget by $99?
Yeah.
Oh, well, pull that out of there.
It was requested that we increase it, that way they are able to purchase items for their meetings or for themselves, such as business cards or, prior to these, the placards, things of that nature.
The budget committee wants to spend money?
No, it was really about the placards. It's really about the placards.
Before we had these placards, there were various budget committee members that would have pieces of paper with their name on it. So in order to look a little more professional, we would do that to allow us to purchase those items for them.
Thank you.
I really don't want to go next. Somebody else jump in.
I'll go. I have some questions for the fire department, please. We don't have impact fees. My understanding is that we used to have impact fees, and we are negotiating developer agreements with new constructions. Are those benefits for those development agreements being budgeted as revenue somewhere? Can we bring back impact fees for the fire department, police department, things like that, when these new developments come to town? How are we realizing the increased needs of the town? But I'm thinking specifically the fire department. How are we managing that?
So we don't have impact fees.
Yep.
We used to, and that's a whole nother discussion that the chairman probably has a pretty good understanding on. I can tell you that the intent behind it, I think, is very sound.
Yep.
Because as business comes into town, it does have a draw on the town services.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get together and you do studies and you come up with, for example, the Elliott Urgent Care. That will generate, X amount of calls a year. So what can the town of Londonderry get for that draw on that service? But, Mr. Chairman, you would have far more institutional knowledge on that one.
Impact fees were something that was in place that were not well used or managed, resulted in a forensic audit ordered by the court, and there was some changes happened here in the town, and we returned all the impact fees because the law is not really well written.
Okay.
And so what we moved to was things called development agreements.
Yes.
So we moved to development agreements so that we could actually manage it on the front end versus managing it on the back end. So for example, there's a pilot for New Balance, which we went to the groundbreaking for today, in which we have a development agreement in which they're going to pay us, a fee in lieu of taxes.
Okay.
So it's that's more complicated because of loans through the state and nonprofits and who owns the land, and the airport leases land and people build on the land that the airport leases. But it's the impact fees managed on the back end are historically not well. I guess the best way to say it is not well done through not only here but in other places.
Okay.
So, but it was millions of dollars we returned. That frankly wasn't our money.
Right.
So it's there's a whole court case on it and everything.
So we had a developer that sued us because of the results of the forensic audit, correct?
Well, they sued us and that caused the forensic audit.
Okay.
So it's, and it's something that probably was historically a good idea. People thought SB2 was a good idea in default budgets. I happen to disagree. But, you know, but it's something that the legislature probably needs to
Yeah.
give us better guidance on. I mean, what's your point of view?
I completely agree. I mean, so as you point out, Mr. Chairman, it's something that's not easy to administer. I think it would really, we would have to look hard at whether we're set up in the finance department to, and the planning and economic development department to administer a program like that, because you don't want to get it wrong. There are
People
also.
go to jail if you get it wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
So-
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I get that.
I think that it's a very, and I'll let the assistant town manager jump in if she has anything to add, but you can't use it for everything that you would think you might be able to use it for. There's a set of statutory things that you can use it for, mostly public facilities. I think that they're probably like traditionally best tied to kids in schools. And as you know, Mr. Chairman, we have a declining school population. And so, you know, those impacts from our developments are limited. But you're exactly right. I mean, it set off not only a court case and everything that went with it, it set off, costs of that litigation, of the forensic audit, which is probably more expensive than legal services. And it's just something that I think a lot of people have a lot of heartburn about, even however many years later.
Okay.
Yeah, the forensic audit at that time was somewhere between 250 and 300,000, somewhere in that ballpark.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, impact fees, I mean, are, the law has to be structured in a way that makes it easier to use them. What would happen is you would have all these impact fees and all this money. It's not your money, and it would sit in these accounts, and then sometimes it would sit there too long and it wouldn't get returned. And then the way that the law was written, you couldn't apply the money even if you wanted to, because it wasn't exactly the way the impact fee law was written.
Yep.
So these development agreements,
You can do everything.
we can do everything and don't have to follow the impact rules.
And I'll just add, Mr. Chairman, I've worked in municipalities that have impact fees, and in my experience, those fees are not an accurate reflection on the true financial impact and cost. The development agreements allow us to have an accurate agreement in real time, if you will, that will fill that, financial strain or need should it happen.
So for example, let's say a full service hospital wanted to build in town. We would be able to go to them and say, okay, well, if you want to do this, this is how it's going to affect our department. This is the agreement that we would have with you to do this. And we would have to hire 5 more firefighters. We have to hire 10 more paramedics. In the case of Woodmont, in their development agreement is written that once they reach a certain point of where service will change, which may happen with the Baldwin, they have to build a public safety building at Woodmont and help us fund it. They have to pay for it, build it, and then they have to help us fund the services. So that's built into their development agreement.
So if their development agreement says, say, for example, if we build 8 new apartment buildings and we are required to build that public safety building, what's to stop them from building 7 and then them not having to build that public safety building?
It's all built on a mathematical calculation that we built into the agreement.
Okay, got it.
So
Got it.
Also, what's built into the agreement is that if we have to build a school to support what they're doing, they have to sell us the land at X number of dollars below market cost.
Okay, got it.
So there was that one's actually a pretty good one to look at from the standpoint of what we were able to do. And also understand under the United States Supreme Court decision, we can't ask them to do anything.
Okay.
No. Correct me if I'm wrong. We can ask them to do things, we can't make them do anything.
Got it.
So you have to come to a collective agreement on it. You can't require it.
Okay.
The impact fees, they need to change the law.
Yeah.
It's actually more beneficial to look at a project before it comes to town and provide them with what our recommendations are for assistance if they were to bring that development into town, right? Let's say a developer were to come and want to put up, 17 apartment buildings of, four stories, right?
First,
At-
we would tell them to go away.
Right. But we could, at the planning point, when that developer comes forward, the fire department could say, that many buildings of that size would put an undue burden on our ladder trucks, let's say.
Yep.
We need you to cover the cost of a ladder truck in order to bring this into town.
Okay, got it.
That would be part of a developer's agreement.
Okay, got it.
Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
We're just looking for creative ways to try and have the tax burden be more on commercial and industrial and ease the tax burden on the residents.
Yeah.
But it seems like that's already happening.
Sadly,
through
it's
the
gonna keep
developer.
going that way,
Yeah.
because the way valuations are working and everything, commercial doesn't move as fast as residential. So right now, we're at like a 60-40 split, where we used to be close to 50-50.
Hopefully some of the new industry coming in will help with that.
Well, that's exactly, I mean, that just to your point, Mr. Chairman, we were up on Pettingill Road today, and that's the perfect area for that kind of development. It's contained up there. The impacts on, the center of town are less. And we're looking at millions of dollars in tax revenue over the next 10 years that New Balance is going to be bringing in. So there's still, there's like 1 million square feet in the pipeline in the next couple of years, few years up there. There's already 4 million square feet, $250 million of value, and that's all value that we would have to be raising from residential taxpayers if we weren't fortunate enough to have it. So that's really where we're focusing a lot of our efforts. The other, to your point about, how can we ease the burden on taxpayers? Going after new revenue wherever we can find it. Interest revenue, that's been helping us out recently, but also motor vehicle revenue, and that's dependent on a healthy town clerk's department, a town clerk's department that can take that traffic, and so that's something that we're looking at as well.
I mean, to give you an example, they're going and visiting the rental car companies directly, because state law says they garage in Londonderry, they register in Londonderry. So that's something that the clerks actually go out and get the things to bring them in.
Yep.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, that does, yeah. Another question I have is ambulances and EMS services. Are we billing residents when they have ambulatory services? And if so, when they pay their bills, where does that money go? Because if it doesn't go back into the fire department and it goes into a general fund, for example, can we maybe take some of that money instead and just reinvest it into the fire department? Or how does that work?
That's a good question. I'm going to have.
So I'll hit a
Chief
couple of
Allen
those
hit those.
points.
That's a
and
really
I'm-
good question, Kate.
I'm going to wait and feel Justin's heat on the side of my face. So the fire department
Fire guy,
does.
you can take the heat.
The fire department does provide ambulance service. The tax base supports the ability for us to have the ambulances in the station and the people in the ambulances. We then, when it goes on a call, we bill for the service provided. And we contract through a third-party company in order to recoup our costs for that particular service. That money goes into the general fund as revenue, but there's also a budgeted amount every year in each budget that we say we're going to get, and anything in excess of that will just go as a surplus to the undesignated fund balance.
Okay.
How'd I do?
So you did a great job. I just know, because I've had a couple of these questions recently.
There's actually only one exception to that. That's the cable revenue. But when cable gets revenue, the money has to be spent with them and with the school, right?
The 32.5 that we receive for, yes.
Yes.
It has to go into the capital reserve to be spent for equipment upgrades, and a portion of that goes to the school as well.
Yeah.
Going back to the ambulance, we currently budget $675,000. Based on the old valuation, that's about 13.5 cents.
Okay.
Looking at the entire fire department, that's roughly covers 8% of the fire department.
Okay.
That being said, it's the communications, fire prevention, all the other services, it covers 8% of their entire budget. So yes, it does go to the general fund, but if you look, it's actually in the revenue portion in the fire department revenue.
Okay, got it.
But it is technically everything in the general fund, whether it's building, fire, anywhere else, it all goes into the general fund, but we put each department in there so we're able to show what it is.
Okay.
If we were to remove that, based on last year's valuations, you'd be looking at a 13.5 cent increase, which on a $400 or $400,000 home is about, I want to say $54 per year,
Okay.
that you would see the increase go on.
Okay.
Essentially, as Bruce basically did a great job explaining of how we fund it with that aspect, if they show up and they don't transport you, you don't pay. There's no
Okay.
bill. It's the transportation is where you get the fee. And it's allowing the utilization, those that utilize it, to pay some of the cost rather than just the taxpayers of Londonderry.
Yes.
Because we have, the airport's a perfect example. If somebody gets transferred from the airport, they can be from out in Georgia.
Yep.
If we have a zero, that means the taxpayers are now paying for that individual to be transported.
Yep.
And to the best of my knowledge, I looked into it a couple of years ago, we cannot segregate from
Londonderry
Londonderry
versus
residents
non- yeah.
versus non-Londonderry residents. It's,
And believe it or not, we do have a very large transient population of people moving through town that utilize the emergency services, that get billed, that are not residents of town. And additionally, I believe Deputy Chief Heinrich presented a presentation to the town council earlier this year about us raising the fees of the ambulance service, right? So it's one of the things we're looking at is we can raise our rates to be more in line with some of our surrounding towns to generate more revenue from the ambulance service. But ultimately, we get credited for what we do on an average, right? So we can raise it, but it won't have an impact on our operational department for that year. It would be further years after we change what we average for our revenue.
Okay, great.
Keep me honest here, Bruce. AMR is charging about $2,500 a trip in Manchester.
It's, yeah, it's ridiculous. But I mean, you can charge whatever you want, right? But payers will only pay what they say they're gonna pay, right? Medicare, which is a large component of what we transport, are people who have Medicare or Medicaid, and the government sets government rates. So they'll only pay what they say they're gonna pay. Private subscribe, like private services will pay a little bit higher. And then you get into the private ambulance services, you're on the hook for that bill, whether you can pay it or not. So they'll actually attach, financial liens to you in order to get their money, whereas the town, we provide the service and we send you a bill, but we don't recoup the bill if they don't pay it. We have to, write it off as bad debt service.
that's not entirely true.
Uh-oh.
We'll work with people.
Correct.
Yes, 100% we work with people. We do have a collection agency should individuals refuse to reach out or refuse to work with us to come to a conclusion. As I tell everybody that calls and asks for assistance or anything, we're not looking to take food off your table. We're looking to cover the cost as much as we can to limit the impact on the Londonderry taxpayers. We have a lot of situations where Bruce mentioned that we can charge X amount, doesn't mean the insurance company's going to pay it. We are not in contract with various insurance, actually I don't think we're in contract with any insurance company because historically what will happen is the insurance company will say, oh, you're billing us $1,000, we're going to pay $100, have a great day, see you later, no discussion. Meanwhile, if we aren't in contract, we bill $1,000, the insurance company says they're only paying $100, the person calls Coastal, our billing company, and they explain to them that they have to essentially go back to the insurance company to have them explain why, and magically that $100 is now $900, $950. And that's been the case for quite some time as to why we're not in contract with those vendors.
Okay, that makes sense. And then my last question is about the additional 4 paramedics for the fly car. When we're talking about the fly car and the new paramedics, do we have a total of what the warrant article dollar amount would be? So would it include the expenses for the salaries, including any type of vacation coverage for them? And then the second part of that is, we're hiring paramedics who will be cross-trained as firefighters,
Yes,
correct?
it's a good question, and it shows that we didn't do a good enough job explaining. So It's not that we're hiring paramedics, which would be a higher cost for the town.
Yep.
We're taking the paramedics we currently have on staff
Yep.
and moving them where we can, 4 of them, to the fly car.
Okay.
And then hiring firefighters who come in at the lowest rate and then can train up to whatever EMS service that they can achieve.
Got it.
Hopefully, we do capture some paramedics on that, but there again, one of the reasons why we need to do the fly car is because paramedics just aren't around.
Yep.
So as a department, we're faced at training the people in-house, sending them to paramedic school to get that additional education, and then come back to us and, be that highest level of pre-hospital care. So it's not that we're hiring 4 paramedics.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
Okay,
Yes.
awesome.
One of the best things about
You would hire 'em.
Yeah.
Right.
we just got around.
One of the best things about the fire service is that all of our personnel are multidimensional, meaning, they have some training as it relates to EMS, whether that be EMT Advanced, or paramedic. All of our personnel are certified firefighters, Fire 1, Fire 2. All of our personnel have additional certifications, whether it's hazardous materials technician, whether it's confined space rescue, whether it's ice rescue. So when you look at what makes up your fire department, the people that are staffing those positions, they're not just riding around on fire trucks every day. They, as Councilor Dunn saw, they'll move from 3 different pieces of apparatus throughout the day in order to affect the service that they need to affect for the day. The fly car concept gives us the ability to take our most valuable asset as it relates to pre-hospital EMS care, put them into a vehicle where they're not going to be dedicated to going out of town to the hospital for patients that don't require advanced level support. It would be like every time you felt a twinge in your chest, you go see a cardiologist. No, you go see your primary care first, and then if you require further level of care, you get referred to a specialist. That's essentially what paramedics are. They're specialists, and by sending them on every ambulance to every hospital, every time a patient needs a transport, it's not the most effective use of a resource.
Yep, that makes sense. Thank you.
So back to the first part of the question, though, what's the number for the warrant article? Do we know? Maybe that's a Justin
I
question?
don't have.
It would be, and this is where we would be able to kind of discuss one of the benefits of how we budget our insurance now, where it's all grouped together. Whether or not we want to have this warrant article reflect 4 family plans, or kind of split it out that way. If we were to reflect 4 family plans at step 1 firefighter, you'd be looking at about 465,000-ish.
So that's our worst case scenario.
Yes.
Okay.
And again, that's why the way we budget insurance now, where it's all in one group, we could somewhat safely lower that down to a 2-person, or maybe do 1 of each, where we have a buyout, single, 2-person family.
Okay.
Which drastically decreases the cost instantly. The salaries with benefits, or salaries with NHRS and Medicare, is about $277.
Okay.
The dental and medical insurance is $181,000.
But we should probably budget for the worst-case scenario.
That would be the
if-
worst case at that point. Yeah.
And if someone is a single person, or, just has kids, or doesn't
Yeah.
have kids yet, it may be a savings to the town at some point.
Correct.
Okay. And we had, trying to remember the numbers. We have 12 paramedics at one point, and we're down to 8, or it's something like that?
So we have
Yes.
a mix, right? So traditionally, 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, we hired firefighter paramedics, right? Because
I remember.
that's what we required. The paramedic pool has significantly dried up, and what we've also seen is your paramedics are now into leadership roles. So, paramedics are lieutenants, paramedics are battalion chiefs. 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, I was one of the paramedics riding around on the ambulances. I'm a battalion chief now, I don't ride around on the ambulances. So we haven't backfilled those people that used to ride around on the ambulances all the time because there's no paramedics to find. So where we can hire paramedics, we've hired paramedics. Where we've been able to hire people that are just paramedics and don't have firefighter training, we've hired them and put them through fire school so that they are that multidimensional employee that we talked about. But, we're down to, right now, I believe we're down to 7 or 8 firefighter paramedics, and we have almost as many lieutenant paramedics, but your job role changes. You become, instead of that entry-level firefighter paramedic treating patients on the street, your job role as a lieutenant becomes more multidimensional on the entire crew and the entire scene. So we use them as paramedics as necessary, but they're not necessarily the paramedics that get on the ambulance and go to the hospital.
Okay, got it.
Okay, and just for educational purposes, we have defibrillators in every town vehicle now, right?
Yeah,
We have
we do, right?
defibrillators,
All engines, all ambulances.
town vehicles, public works trucks,
All emergency.
police
vehicles, I
cars.
think.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone has one now. They've all been trained, right?
That I don't know. I can't speak for
So
outside
let's
of the
find out.
fire.
We bought them. They're supposed to be there. They're supposed to be trained. Takes, you guys told me, 4 minutes, you gotta get hit with the defibrillator, right?
Or good quality, good high-quality CPR while we're waiting for a
So we put
defibrillator.
defibrillators at all the recreational places. They're finally over at the bandstand. They're in all the schools and every place else. They're in the public works trucks, the police truck vehicles, and the fire vehicles. All right? Town voted on them. We paid for them. Can you guys let us know where we stand from a training status standpoint if everyone's trained and ready to go?
Roger that.
Could I just add one thing on
Yes.
the warrant article amounts?
Yes.
So these four, they're all gonna have vacation.
Mhm.
They're gonna be manned with overtime hours.
Mhm.
Will that be contemplated in the warrant article amount, or otherwise, I think your overtime line's probably gonna be understated for this.
That's something that you usually adjust in the budget with the salaries, right?
Yeah, so
Good question.
ideally with these positions, you won't see a one-to-one, but ideally with these positions, you'd actually see overtime decrease because you have 4 additional people that are on staff to cover should somebody take a vacation day. You don't have to call somebody in to make sure you meet minimum requirements. The 465 that I gave you does not include that aspect. Well, we budget them for 2,184 hours. That's what they're scheduled to work throughout the year. Whether they use their vacation time or sick time or personal time, it's still 2,184 hours throughout the year. In terms of the overtime, that would be difficult to add into this one because ideally you should see a slight decrease because you're upping the staffing.
Yeah, but you're upping the staff, that means you have more people that have vacation time to take.
Right, you're upping the requirements as well. So your requirement for each battalion would be 17 now, right?
No.
Sorry.
Oh, we'd love 17. Put that on the warrant article. So our,
17.
yeah, so our shift,
Generous guy.
our shift staffing right now is 12 firefighters, which includes all ranks. That's firefighter to battalion chief. There's 12 on duty.
This would bring that up to 13.
This would bring us up to 13.
So I think what Ryan's trying to say is that now that the requirement's 13, you're not gaining a body that would allow a decrease in overtime. You're gaining a body that would not allow a decrease in overtime because your requirement went up. Does that make sense?
So
It does, and that's where I would defer to Chief Bill, whether or not we staff at 13 and require 12, or we staff at 13 and require 13.
So we went through this about 10 years ago when we were running 7 or 8 on a shift. And what was happening is that we weren't able to send mutual aid out because we would be sending out 2-man crews on mutual aid and they would just look at us and just say, go away. Because there's nothing you could do. So we were running about $700,000 or $800,000 a year on overtime when Chief O'Brien took over. And what the council told him is that we're not going to run with less than 10 anymore because it reached a point of dangerous. So what was happening is they were going to fire and they were running what they call dead man pump. So they'd start the pump and then 2 of them would go in and they leave the pump running unattended. So we made a decision back then to blow the overtime budget out and, just make sure the people were safe. That's when we started going to the ballot and adding firefighters. So what I'm going to say next is that I'm going to ask the finance director if he can give me a staggered, warrant article. So I hire 2, and then I wait 6 months and I hire another 2. Because if we can keep it at 12, to your point, with vacations, and then ease them into 13 until we can get these people trained and then even the schedule out would be, another way to look at it. I mean, it's an excellent point.
Yeah.
But that's how we got where we are.
And to answer your question, Ryan, you're absolutely correct. If we add more people, there's going to be an increase. But you have to remember, these are all entry levels, so the amount of time they have to take and the amount of time it takes them to accrue is very limited, right? So though there is an increase, it's very minimal. And because our department by and large is extremely young, our overtime is down from what it was when 3, 4, 5 years ago, and we had top step 25-year veterans, right? So if you look at the data, our overtime numbers are lower. Well, not this year because we're filling open positions, but had we been full, our overtime would be lower than it had been probably the last 5, 6, 7 years, and even salaries because of the age switch in the department.
The other thing is those 4 brand-new people, they have to accrue over the next year. So they don't just get 2 weeks of vacation and, a week of sick time when they start on. They get nothing, and they have to earn up over that next year to get their accruals. So it's a staggered, it's not like the day they start, they can take, right.
Correct.
They have to, it's accrued time.
Right. Unlike some places where you start and they say, here's your 2 weeks of vacation and your 2 weeks of sick time.
Yeah.
They don't get that, right? So it's
And
exactly,
it's
it's a stagger.
all contractually based, so.
What I sort of explained to the chief when he took over is I said, go walk around, go look around. You're the old guy. These are the old guys.
Well, we like to refer to ourselves as more just refined now, not necessarily old yet.
All right, Bruce, thank you.
I'll tell you some stories about Bruce.
But I don't think we have time for that.
All right, so we're good with fire.
Yep.
We'll switch to police.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So going to Ryan's question there, if we are requiring 13 at that point, what I would do is I would take the average overtime for the firefighter levels and apply those hours to the 4 additional people to add those to the warrant article.
Thank you.
So you would adjust for that in the warrant article then?
If that's the way that we're going, we're requiring 13, yes.
And
I would add that in there.
I also like a number based on a split hire.
So 6 months?
6 months, 6 months. Give us a number on a split hire for consideration.
All right, Chief.
So before I begin, can I just say if you go missing?
You have a prime suspect.
And secondly, and seriously, if anything ever happens to Fritz Weatherby, you are my vote. This woman is my vote. I say get her up there and take over Fritz Weatherby. Anyway.
She might have
wait to say
competition
that.
from my wife.
You know?
All right, Chief, so Dan Bouchard, he's still here. He asked some questions earlier. Did I say your name wrong?
No, he's
Okay.
correct.
You call him Dan.
About that
Mr.
captain
Bouchard.
position. So can you,
About the captain?
yeah,
So, yeah, let me back up, Mr. Chair. So, as Dan pointed out, some years ago, it was approved by former Chief Hart to take over and start the Professional Standards and Legal Bureau, in which at that time we were adopting the CALEA gold standard in law enforcement, which you heard me briefly remark. Back then, former town manager, the former town council members approved and adopted to take on that program. And I can't speak for what was presented. I was here, but I was not part of the decision-making body. But what I can tell you is that what I know now, what I didn't know as a young captain, was the amount of work that one man does to maintain the CALEA accreditation status for your police department is overwhelming. Now, it's like anything else, when we're inexperienced and we don't know, we jump all in, we go for it. And with time and experience, like you all have up here, your first time sitting up there until today, you gain more knowledge and you understand more. With that position, we understand that that is a lot of responsibility for one man. A lot of agencies have a CALEA accreditation assistant manager. We don't have that. So while yes, that position, as Dan pointed out, was a captain's role, and yes, at that time, Captain Morrison was going to help out with prosecution, we don't have time for him to do that. Yes, as Dan pointed out, he went to law school.
That was in the works before he became a captain. That was in the works before he became the accreditation manager. And continuing education is one of the things that we pride ourselves on here in this police department. We put these things out there for our employees to excel, so you guys have a better product with your employee. We put those things out there in the collective bargaining agreement that get approved on, so we're more competitive with other agencies who are for that. So for me to stand here and tell you that I need to make a captain, or as Dan alluded, make a captain go and do a prosecution's job, then we have to ask ourselves, are we gonna be full-time CALIA certified, or are we just gonna waste 3 years of hard work so I can reuse him as a prosecutor? And I don't think that makes sense. I heard Maureen mention earlier, there's wants and needs. If you guys remember, I said that last year. Wouldn't waste your time, wouldn't waste your hard-earned tax dollars on something I know that we didn't need. So to answer Mr. Bouchard's point, Mr. Chairman, I think it's a need for our organization.
Okay, so that being said, you talked about, Mr. Malaguti, how you've been, things move around within the town and we move money from planning to HR or wherever we're moving those hires. Is that an option for the PD? Don't bark at me, but we
Sir,
have
please ask.
67 positions. I think we still are around 7 that are vacant.
I'm at 61, I believe I told you last time.
Okay.
And I've got 4 coming on, so I have 2 non-certified and 2 certified.
Okay. Is it possible to take that 67th position and change it so that it can be the prosecutor?
I mean, the answer is yes, it's possible. It's something that I think the chief should weigh in on in terms of the need for each of those 67 patrol positions. That was something that we talked about last year at length. I think the feeling was that patrol is taxed to the limit, is my understanding. Would patrol be taxed to the limit if we had 66 but not 67? I can't answer that, but I do know that that's a huge problem the police department has been struggling with since at least I've worked for the town.
There's
And
a little tiny problem with police headcount. We made the decision to send police headcount, fire headcount, public works headcount to the ballot. The voters said, that's how many positions you need. We did the same thing with SROs. So if we're gonna change a position, and it's not that we can't, we really need to think about that from the standpoint of that, that's a service cut. But, and I'm good with it either way.
And I'm not advocating it, I'm just asking the questions.
sorry, it's taking a public safety position, and I mean, I have.
So, I mean,
obviously
if
all the
it's what
respect-
you decide to do as the town manager, that's fine.
Yeah, and that's right. I mean, could we do that within the existing budget? Yeah, that's something that I think we could do legally. I mean, that's the answer. But as the chairman points out, it is taking a public safety person and it's turning them into a courtroom person, a lawyer. And so I think that is a policy concern, as was pointed out. But can it be done? Sure. Yeah, legally it can be done. Is it a good idea? That's something that I think we would want to hear more from the police chief.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, hold on, one more point about
all
that.
good, sir.
So the catch is, if we put it on the ballot to add the prosecutor position and it gets voted down, then we cannot change the position.
That is correct.
I
I think so.
We could not
Put a prosecutor in place. We could have someone who is currently in the police department prosecute cases.
exactly, correct. Yes.
Okay. I don't know how much I muddied the waters there, but there you go.
In other words, if you have a police officer who goes to prosecutor school and learns how to prosecute cases, they can go prosecute cases. I mean, I know of other police officers who may or may not have their law degrees. They could be asked to go prosecute cases.
That's right, and that would depend on how the warrant article is phrased. But if the warrant article says, should we add a prosecutor, it fails, then we can't add a prosecutor. If you say, should we add a attorney prosecutor, it fails. You can't add an attorney prosecutor, you could add a police prosecutor.
Yeah, or we could send town manager Malaguti back to be the police prosecutor. And he works 24/7 anyway, so, it wouldn't matter.
If that's the option, I would take it.
Would we split his budget from the PD? I'm just
Absolutely.
kidding.
We just have them do both.
I think he's quite busy
I like
too.
going to court.
That worries me.
I've never heard anybody say that.
Okay, so same question as fire then. What's the number on the warrant article for the prosecutor?
Yeah, so as I talked about last time, Mr. Cassidy, was that there'll be entry-level positions for an attorney.
Loaded labor,
Well, I can't-
135?
So if we start the position at 95,000, is that what we roughly said before?
In that range, yeah.
Again, going family plans, you're looking at 165.5.
Okay.
And again, I mean, I hear the creativity being asked, and you're not muddying the water, sir. I hear you loud and clear, and I get it. I think that much like the thought up there is that, well, if we have a vacant cop position, let's just hire a prosecutor, is what's being insinuated, and then we'll use that money to pay for that. But then here's what happens. When I get to the point in my staffing levels to provide a service that's adequate and needed, we're behind the ball on some things, such as the detective division, a community relations person, victim witness advocate. I'm gonna have to come back to you and say, I need that position back. And I don't wanna do that to you guys. I don't wanna waste your time. And that's a quick fix for right now, but this isn't a quick fix for today. I need a long-term solution to this problem. And, you know, there's nothing, as the chairman said, sure, I could train or send someone to prosecute a school. Well, that's one other cop that's coming off the road to do a full-time job, spending time in the courts. I mean, if that's what the citizens want of their police department, less cops, we're gonna have problems that fall in place when you have less cops out there. And when you have less cops out there, more crimes are gonna happen, and then I'm coming to you for a third prosecutor, because then we can't keep up.
Right.
That part was tongue-in-cheek, I don't need a.
No, I get it.
And we'd have to pay overtime for the position now prosecuting.
Okay, so what's our plan if the answer is no? If we put it forward, and I'm an advocate, I advocate, I'm all about the new
Yeah,
prosecutor.
that's an easy one, Mr.
I think
Cassidy.
we arrest less people.
Well, as I stood here 2 weeks ago, just about, I told you we were at 500 and something arrests, right? We're at 620 this morning. So we're gonna surpass what we projected. We can't stop arresting people. We don't wanna be that town, right, where we just don't pay attention. But, you know, what happens is this, we're gonna march on. You guys direct, we follow suit. We have, what I told you last time, is we have a per diem. She helps out when she can. And when our prosecutor was on her honeymoon, like, we had to, like, beg, because she has a full-time job and a part-time job. She is a busy woman providing legal services to other municipalities in her own firm. So we would take the direction that's given. I know, like I said before, the burden, as the town manager knows, it's a lot. And I would not want to come back here next year and say to you, well, now we need to hire 2 prosecutors because I just buried this woman and I came to you telling you I had a need. And then we start the process all over again. I don't want to do that.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just to kind of amplify a couple of the points that have been made. And I mean, I think I could, it's been a while since I was a prosecutor, but I think I have a pretty good idea. This, you know, what happens if the answer is no? You know, the PD will make do. They always do that. But a couple things will happen. One is even when I left, we were getting to the point where we had to make tough decisions about what cases we prosecuted and what cases we didn't. And you know, it tended to be the driving offenses that fall off that fall off at, you know, the prosecution list, right? It's the op-afters. There's a ton of them. It's this you know, minor speeding cases. It's the you know, stuff like that we really just can't prioritize. That's, you can live with that. I mean, I think that you certainly want to prosecute those cases as aggressively as you can within reason, because it really does lead to safer roads. It does lead to people who aren't driving around without licenses. Nobody wants that. But more importantly, and the chief talked about this the last time, is the victim outreach component to this. There is a statutory obligation. I believe there's a constitutional obligation in New Hampshire as well to make outreach to victims of crimes. And it's not every victim, right? It's not everybody who's in a fender bender, but it is everybody who's a victim of certain crimes. And take it from me, this was, when you have a caseload of 100, 200, whatever the number is, cases that you're working on, and it includes, he talked about arrests, it includes JV cases on top of that, and it includes any number of additional things, such as the administrative license suspension cases that go with every DWI. It really is reaching the point where, gosh, we're not able to make as much outreach to victims of violent crimes as we need to be, and that's really where I see the big liabilities. I see the big concerns, and that's really, I think, where we need to ask ourselves: have we reached the tipping point where we just can't provide that statutory and constitutional? We can't meet that obligation that we have.
Cool, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, yes, I'm sorry.
You guys are proposing $95,000 for this position. Is that in line with market? Is it going to attract the right person to be able to fill the role quickly enough?
So I can tell you this, Ted, that I've never hired a lawyer before. But I can, cops, that's my thing. I don't know what a young, aspiring attorney out of law school gets offered out there in the private sector. I can tell you that the draw would be for a municipality is the retirement option, the benefit packages that come with that.
Or you might become town manager someday.
Play your cards right.
I'm not sure that was an improvement to what he was looking for.
No,
So some days I think he wonders.
Yeah, and I think, to answer your question, Ted, I think you got to have a starting point somewhere, right? And if that range isn't within reason.
I guess the question is, did you consult anyone for the salary range for the position?
Yes, so vaguely, I bounce ideas off of the current prosecutor and obviously the town manager. In that range is what an average or a new starting out prosecutor would be. Wonderful. There are other municipalities that are around us that are paying more than us. I don't like to say that too loud, but they are. And, could we fill it? I hope so.
Okay, great.
I can't sit here and say I'll have someone hired tomorrow. I don't have anybody on my radar in case anybody thinks that we have somebody already pegged for this. I don't. But if it does get passed and anybody up there knows somebody who may want to work for your police department and serve in the role of a prosecutor, I mean, hey, we'll interview anyone that's got those, experience on them.
Well, you answered my question. If you consulted different sources for the price range. I just want to make sure that that was done. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, what you'll, is, in the law business in New Hampshire, litigators or people who appear in court are at the lower end of the spectrum now. There's not as many people who are lawyers who want to go to court and want to be litigators. There's a great desire for them. And if that's the type of law you want to do, cutting your teeth as a prosecutor is the fastest way to get there so that you can get recognized. So that is definitely something, if someone's young and likes that kind of law, that will help them get recognized.
So I'm going to pivot from police. So does anyone else have any other police?
Question.
Yes.
When he
Please.
come back here, if it ends up being more than 95,000?
He would have to come back and tell us, yes.
Yeah, so what we could do is, obviously, I could work with you in the next, obviously this week's kind of shot, but I can do some emails and correspond back and forth more directly with Justin and get the exact numbers what our, I want to say competitors, but the surrounding agencies are paying. And again, we're trying to be in line and be competitive, so we get good quality candidates too.
Yeah, just want to make sure you actually get someone.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we had a hard time last time. I mean, we have a great reputation, as I said before, and that's carried us for a long time. But people want to be recognized and they want to be paid appropriately too. So I appreciate you, asking that. Thank you.
We go with the chief. All set?
Thanks, Chief.
Next item.
All right, so for Department of Public Works, this is in regards to the replacement of the DPW vehicles. We're trying to figure out, is this going to be a separate warrant article? If so, how much will be the estimated cost? And if not, we saw the monies allocated for the roadway maintenance trust fund. the $650,000, would the monies be coming out of there? Or would this be a separate warrant article to cover the replacement costs?
Feel free, John.
Replacement costs are
Separate.
Separate,
So the
right,
roadway maintenance trust can't be used to replace those vehicles. It can only be used for roadway maintenance. If you look on the tax calculation sheet, you'll see what I'm anticipating the annual payment to be is about 90,000 for those vehicles.
Oh, okay, so that's the,
That's
that's the
12.
vehicle lease.
Correct.
Correct. That's the lease payment.
Okay.
That's what I'm anticipating for it to be.
And that would be the lease payment every year for how many years?
I believe I did 10 years for those, based on their life expectancy. 7 years for the 1 ton.
Okay, so how does that work as far as the warrant article go? Do we have to put up a new warrant article every year? Or is that?
Once that's
one
approved, it
advantage
becomes
of
part of the
default budgeting.
operating budget. Similar to the fire department engines we discussed earlier, where those will be falling off, this will be added to the budget to continue forward until determined.
Okay, then the 650 for the roadway maintenance, how does that compare to years past?
With the exception of last year, that's typically what's requested.
Okay.
Last year, we lowered it because we got a significant increase from the state that was unanticipated that offset the difference, and we wanted to try to lower the impact on the taxpayers because of that.
So probably about 15 years ago, we started doing $1 million a year for roadway maintenance. And then we switched to the 650,000 about 7 years ago.
correct.
So
Thereabouts.
many of the surrounding towns were putting out warrant articles for 10, 20, 30 million dollars to do roadway maintenance. So we came up with a plan of, let's do $1 million a year, because you can't work off $30 million in 1 year anyway. So about halfway into it, and we started doing the math on it and saying, well, it's actually cheaper if we do it this way, where we take the money from the state and we do the 650,000, and we actually save the money on the interest. And I think we figured out that we would like pay for 2 or 3 years that way without having to take the bond and having to pay the interest on the bonds. And the 650 number we've been carrying for about 7 or 8 years, right?
Since,
We can do less with it, but it's about the same amount of money.
been a while.
It ticked up for a little bit. It started lower once the roadway bonds that were previously that you mentioned fell off.
Yeah.
They started increasing that, I believe. This was prior to me, so I am just speaking on general idea, not fact on that.
Yeah, so it's been pretty good, but that way they've been able to do reconstruction of roads, knowing that the additional money was coming, and that they were able to bank that money to do it, within the seasons. So, John would, if I let John tell you, John would probably tell you he needs double that to actually catch up, because we're behind.
Correct. And again, the drawback is, for instance, the Harvard Road culvert was $1.5 million project that we just completed. So it took us 3 years to accumulate that money to be able to put it out to bid and actually have it constructed. So as John says, yeah, you want to give me more, absolutely, but we
But
do what
that's
we
pretty
can.
much the directive they got was then, and you can probably all attest to this, there's no potholes in town. The roads here, if you go to other towns, we have a pretty good reputation. Could they use more money? Absolutely. There's probably a number of roads that need to be reconstructed. Going back to your impact fee statement, back on the planning board many years ago, the gentleman who was in the position prior to John Llanos put in place regulations that had them build roads that could actually last 50 years, so that we weren't redoing it, and the developer had to take on the burden of building those roads, not using impact fees, but they had to build those roads as part of their project.
Okay.
So that, not a development agreement, but an agreement through enforcing our ordinances.
Okay.
It was
They were
creative at
built
the
in-
time.
Built to a standard.
Okay, got it.
That's what the
Yeah.
bottom line is.
Good.
Thank you, I think that's all for DPW?
Yeah.
That was easy.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry, you and I are gonna talk about Lions Hall.
So a couple for Justin, and then I think we're close, right?
Yeah, we're very close.
So,
Only
Hell-
at the 50-yard line.
Health insurance, well, for you guys.
We don't have any questions, we're letting you ask all.
Health insurance benefits for part-time employees. What is the minimum number of hours? We'll go ahead, go with that first, Justin.
There are only 3 individuals that are part-time that are eligible for health insurance.
Okay. So we have approximately 200 full-time employees. We're averaging 26K in health insurance costs per employee if the part-time employees were not included.
Okay?
How does that 26K employee compared, that we're paying, compared to the portion that the employee is covering? If our average is 26K is correct, and that was what our fee is for a full-time employee for health insurance, what's their cost?
So there's only one union that has an employee portion cost, and that is only, I believe, 2% or 3%?
4% now. I think it's going to be 4%, I believe, beginning in '25.
You're gonna need to explain that more. Their HSAs, you need to go into more depth in explaining.
So several years ago, we switched over to the high deductible plan, and those require the HSA. What the town did is, in the union negotiations to get them to switch over to the high deductible healthcare, we negotiated the negotiation took place regarding their portion versus the town's portion. So instead of being on a PPO plan,
Yep.
they're all on high deductible at this point, and we only cover what. So let's say you decide to go on the PPO plan instead, the town will only cover what it would for the high deductible plan. Everything above that, the employee covers.
Okay, but the towns, so the other thing that's negotiated in that is how much the town would put in. So the town I work in, we pay a portion of the health insurance cost, but the town gives us a certain amount of money towards our deductible every year. Puts that into the HSA. Are we doing that as well or no?
Yes.
I want to work here.
So basically, 5 years ago?
Yeah,
4 years
I
ago?
think we finished 5 years ago.
Finished 5 years, so we were paying on these PPO plans, and you could select wherever you wanted to go and everything else. The calculation was that if we would absorb the HSA fee, the deductible fee, and we were going, when they ran all the math, we were gonna save $250,000 on health insurance by getting them to move over, and the employee would actually put more money in their pocket, yet the taxpayer would save $250,000 every year going forward. So we did that about 4 or 5 years ago. We highly encourage the other forms of government to join us in that. I'm not sure where they stand, but we highly encourage them to go down that path as well, because it was just a huge savings. Where we're at, we now have all new collective bargaining agreements as we're going through them, and as healthcare continues to change, that is all open for negotiation as far as mutual contributions going forward. Does that answer your question?
Yes, to some degree. So as it stands now, we cover 100% of the health insurance premium, right? And what are we giving the employee towards the deductible? For example,
Except the TAP union. There's one union where we don't pay 100%.
okay, you're right. I was painting with a broad brush. Sorry. So the say the family deductible is $4,000. Are we contributing 2? Are we contributing 4? What are we doing?
So I'll speak with a broad brush here too, because some of the unions, it changes.
Okay, fair enough.
We have
Agreed.
8 different unions, so.
For the most part, a single plan, it's 1,000. For a 2-person or family, it's 2,000.
That's our contribution.
To their HSA, yes.
Okay. Okay.
As I said, some of the unions, it differs, but that is the general consensus on it.
And by doing that, we were able to lower all of our premiums because it invested the employee into the plan with us, working with us, versus not before.
Okay. What incentives do we have in place to encourage employees to opt out of insurance benefits if they can?
And if I may just interject before we get to that point, so just going on the point that you made, Mr. Chairman, I mean, we did save a significant amount of money when this occurred. I think what nobody anticipated was that all of the regulatory changes to the health insurance markets that the Obamacare legislation was intended to have really hasn't. Health insurance costs have not been controlled the way that anybody anticipated that they would be, and so we have these larger structural issues. Yeah. About
Government screwed it up?
That that really, I mean, have affected, frankly, our calculus on this as well. I think we saved a lot of money early on. We're probably doing better than we would have been doing if we had made these changes. But I think everybody can reasonably be disappointed about the fact that health insurance costs as a nation are out of control, and there just doesn't seem to be any way to rein that in at the moment.
We went up, we had $700,000 drop off in our bond payments,
Correct.
and our health insurance went up 900,000?
It went up more than that. It went up $1.3 million.
So $700,000 in bond payments, which means this building and the police department and everything else that was on that warrant article went out.
Yep.
And we added 1.3 million.
Correct.
Okay.
So, and that's kind of, that strikes to the heart of my frustration here, is that as we have bonds come off, we want to be able to use that money, that savings, to get other bonds, to do the other things that we need to do, like Public Works and other
Lions Hall.
projects. And Lions Hall and whatever people decide. Good
I'm laughing because it's your frustration. You should have seen our frustration when we got this news. I mean, we were hoping exactly that. You put your finger right on it.
So
I'll be honest, and this is bad. I was beyond annoyed because I really thought with 800,000 falling off, I was going to be able to provide you guys with an operating budget that is below where it was last year and still provide exactly what we needed because of the work we did in last year's budget. Then I found out 19%, and I shut my door and said some choice words. Because it was, to be honest, it was defeating. Because I really was hopeful that I would be able to do that. And this, you look at the rest of the budget and you take this away, and it's pretty close. So I'm right there with you. If it makes you feel any better, I know it doesn't, but I'm right there with you in the frustration on that. Because this is one I was excited for this year. I had it circled, ready to go, 800,000 dropping off. Let's see what we can do, get the tax rate lower, and then 19% out of my control.
See, this goes right back to the opening statement I made when we started budget season. It's choice among services.
yes, agreed.
I mean, it's completely a choice among services. Do we continue to give the same level of service or not? And that's where we're stuck. The balancing act that we try to do is we bring in this new revenue. Best we can hope for is keeping it even. I mean, it's disgusting, but that's where we are.
Agreed. So then, in looking at creative ways to save, that's what we're trying to find is what incentives do we have in place to encourage employees to opt out of the insurance plans if they can? How do we do that?
So that again depends on the union contract, but it's between a $2,500 buyout or a $5,000 buyout. Some of the unions have a grandfathered in that's a little bit larger. But I would agree that, I'm not sure if this is where you're going, that increasing that would encourage people to take the buyout, which would then put less on us.
But is that something we can actually do, or does that have to happen in a contract?
Well,
contract
it you would have to bargain over it, but I don't see any union saying, no, we don't want you to, because a buyout is a benefit as well, and it's the employee's choice entirely whether they take it or they don't take it. And so they're not giving up anything by us increasing the benefit or increasing the incentive for them not to take the health insurance. So it would be a really easy negotiation, I believe.
So we're exploring that.
That is out of my range.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I identified as something that we need to be doing, or we should be doing, we should be talking about as part of this budget season. I identified it in my presentation, and it was for this reason. I was hoping that there would be some consensus that, yeah, this makes sense. There isn't really a downside for the town, and if that's the consensus, then that's what we'll do.
We'll let you know.
Okay. All right, I think we're last thing. MGMT services, management services.
Yes.
That line for us is confusing. It seems to be a our quote here is, it seems to be a catch-all for line items that would be more correctly listed in other places. We have some examples of that, which is in the weeds details, which we'll send to you.
I love it.
We would like to see items under management services limited to, and this is your quote, services provided by an outside company. So as to avoid that being a catch-all. Kind of feels like the umbrella that we throw something in when we don't really have a good idea of what place it goes in.
It's for a lot of one-offs, depending on the department.
Fair enough.
There are some that I believe I mentioned that use it in that fashion. The fire department is a perfect example. That's where our billing agencies go through. DPW, planning, they all use it for that. For other departments, it's kind of the catch-all or for the one-offs.
I mean, that was a confusing line for me last year, and you explained that to me. So I'd like to see what we can do to make that line less of an umbrella.
Okay,
We'll send you the list of examples, if that's okay.
wonderful, absolutely.
Anybody else have anything? As far as budget committee questions?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I just want to point out that I really commend the BudCom for the exemplary work that they are doing throughout this, and I really appreciate. And I know there was a moment that we were all jocular about the Lions Hall and everything, but honestly, I really appreciate the time and commitment that you put into this to making our community and town better, to lessening the tax impact on the residents and the community members of this town. And I really want to say thank you for all that work, because I know it's not easy. And you don't just have it here, you have it over on the school side as well. So,
And by the way, we really like that you're going over to talk to the schools, right, Bob?
I think you should continue this momentum. But honestly, thank you very much. And like I said, all joking aside, hats off. So thank you.
And I'll continue off that. It's many questions that, the five of us members may not think about. And, having you guys have your dedicated time to look at these is really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Absolutely, thank you.
so can I get the questions ahead of time next time, so I don't have to do these answering things from memory?
No, absolutely not.
And get them.
You're gonna have to start writing things down, John.
Listen, I'm getting old. Accept a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Liaison reports, anything for the liaison reports? Who's the liaison to the budget committee, by the way?
I am.
You are? I am. Oh, boy, I tell you, straighten these guys out, will you? Go ahead, come on.
All right, school.
I'm trying to get us out of here.
School board liaison report. So the purchasing policy review, the school board has completed the third reading of the revised purchasing policy. This round of revisions involves significant changes, preliminary around the financial thresholds as it was previously. Both the school board and the superintendent's office required more time for thorough reevaluation. Further discussion on this matter is scheduled for November 28th. Expansion of CTE program. The superintendent has emphasized an initiative to expand the career and technical education program. This expansion is aimed at providing students with greater opportunities in various trades. The development of this initiative is an ongoing effort. Energy savings collaboration. The school board has invited the Utilities Committee to participate in their meeting on November 28th. This collaboration is focused on initiating discussions about potential strategies on improving energy efficiency in local schools. Superintendent budget presentation. The superintendent is scheduled to present the budget for tomorrow, November 21st. This is a key element to the school district's financial planning and will guide resource allocation for school activities and programs in the upcoming year. And lastly, teacher development training is rescheduled. So originally, the teacher development training originally was planned for February 6th, has been rescheduled based on our Secretary of State has established our primary days to continue being first in the nation. This adjustment accommodates New Hampshire primary set for January 23rd. As a result, there will be no school for students on the 23rd, allowing for smooth conduct of the primary and subsequent teacher training. Is that correct? Thank you. That's it.
Anything else for liaison reports? Town manager report,
Not this evening, Mr. Chairman.
assistant town manager? Everybody all set? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Good night, folks. Our next meeting is December 4th at